Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto is born 6 years before his parents' death. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. A young boy panted, hearing screams of pain echo throughout the village as the ground rocked and vibrated for miles around him. His cerulean blue eyes looked in fear to the large creature assaulting his home, everything he'd known for the past 5 years of his life. Those blue eyes widened, however, when his spiky blonde hair was pushed back by a clearly man-made wind. The sight of a massive orange toad landing directly on top of the orange fox who had destroyed his home in moments. "Tuchan," he whispered, knowing that only 2 men could call on such a toad and one was far from home at the time. The 6-year-old's eyes hardened, the once dominating fear seemingly leaving him as his little legs carried him off, his senses picking up the mixed chakra of his father, his mother, that large fox, and a small, new chakra. The boy knew what he was doing endangered him, knew he wouldn't be able to help. But he had to. Something was dragging him there. A silver-haired masked teen looked in fear as he caught a glimpse of golden hair running through the streets ahead of him, his eyes widening in horror when he saw the boy seemingly running towards where the demon fox had just reappeared and the giant toad was forced to disappear. "Naruto," the boy called, falling on deaf ears before he growled and gave chase. Behind the silver-haired teen's mask, a strange red eye spun, allowing him to see an unusual amount of chakra running from the blonde boy's legs, increasing his speed to keep them apart. "I have to catch up before he reaches the Kyuubi-sensei. He'll only be in danger," he thought aloud, pulsing chakra to his own leg muscles. He wouldn't catch the blonde in time, not before they both came into a clearing as a massive claw embedded itself straight through an older blonde-haired man. The man looked to them, both now seeing his eyes not those similar cerulean the seemingly carbon copy Naruto had. They were golden and toad-like, red markings around his eyelids. "And Naruto, Kakashi, I'm sorry," he whispered, his changed eyes going to a woman with long red hair, golden chains sprouting from her back. "Kushina," he breathed, the woman looking at him weakly with emotional and physical pain written all over her face. The blonde-haired man made a final hand seal and with a shout of fury, the beast that had destroyed their home vanished, sucked into an altar holding a newborn baby boy. "Tuchan!" Naruto screamed, tears long since running down his face as he ran to catch his much larger and heavier father. Kakashi saw Kushina begin to teeter forward, and vanished and reappeared in front of her, catching her gently. He then looked up to see the young blonde cradling his father, Namake's Minato the Yondaime Hokage, his small frame shaking in anguish. The silver-haired teen removed the white umbu mask from his face, revealing pain-stricken mixed-matched eyes and tears of his own. "Tituchan, say something," the boy begged, gritting his teeth as he used all of his strength to shake the limp body of his father. When the boy got no response, not even an inkling of motion from his father, a cry erupted from his throat aimed straight to the heavens. As Kakashi stood, gently laying the still-breathing Kushina on the ground, he felt a firm grip on his shoulder. Looking back, the young teen was beyond shocked to see a blonde-haired woman, a purple jewel mark in the center of her forehead. The woman, with a face of pure remorse, easily pushed the teen back down to sit with Kushina and walked past him towards Naruto. "Minato, I should have been the one to use such a technique," he heard an aged voice lament, turning back to see a much older man encased in black shinobi garb. Looking back, they both watched as the blonde-haired woman pulled the child into a hug, gently setting the motionless body of his father on the ground. The young blonde could only cry into the woman's chest, having no strength to fight back her comforting attempts. "The entire Uzumaki Namake's family made a great sacrifice tonight," the old voice once again brought Kakashi's attention. The teen watched as Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage, walked to the altar and gently picked up the form of a crying crimson-haired child. "Forced to be such a hero on the day of your birth, and to witness the death of your father at such a tender young age, this world truly is unforgiving," the man whispered in his own anguish. He too had lost family tonight, his wife. "Kakashi," the boy's attention was pulled by the blonde woman's voice. "Take Naruto and carry him back to the village. I will take Kushina myself," she requested, walking forward with the boy passed out in her arms. "What about Minato-sensei, Tsunade-sama?" he asked, looking back to the motionless body of the closest thing he had to a father since his own died. "I've got him," Hiruzen said, as a copy of himself went and picked his successor up gently. With that, they left the clearing where a family had lost their father, and the village had lost their leader. A few days later found Naruto sitting bedside of his hospitalized mother, a cold and motionless look on his once boisterous young face. His head shot up as he felt her limp hand grip his own, but was saddened to still see her completely unconscious. His godmother, Tsunade, had told him that it would be some time before his mother awoke, if she even did come out of this coma-like state. The young boy never imagined going through this, his father dying to seal a bijou within his newborn brother, and his mother's life still in jeopardy. "Naruto-kun, I see you haven't gone home to rest like I asked," Tsunade sighed, walking in and placing a comforting hand on the boy's shoulder. "I am not ready for this, Bachan. Why did it have to be them?" he begged, and it was all Tsunade could do to fight back her own scars of loss. "Naruto," she whispered, kneeling down beside his chair. "I've lost a lot of people, it's never fair or easy and it won't be. But someone once told me that someone gives their lives for others so that their precious people can keep on living. Even if their sacrifice means they won't be able to see them grow, or tell them every day how much they love them. I want to make Tuchan proud, and Ka-chan, I don't want to lose her. But I know she doesn't have long Ba-chan, he whispered, his long spiky hair hiding his eyes. Why do you say that, Naruto-kun? Tsunade asked, hoping that the child would hold on to hope that his mother would live. I just know, he said sadly, looking at the dirt floor of this secret facility they had brought his mother to. However, his head shot up when his mother's grip tightened on his small hand, finding her conscious and in pain, judging by the look she gave him. Naruto-chan, she whispered, her violet eyes looking into his blue eyes with nothing but love. I'm so sorry for all your father and I have put you through the past couple days. He could see the regret forming in her eyes as she struggled to find the breath to speak. I want you to be the best big brother you can, and look after Emma for me. I know you'll do so great, and I wish I could stay with you both. He could see the pride in her eyes as a lone tear ran down her cheek, a river flooding down his own. Remember everything your father and I taught you, and pass it on to Menma, he's always going to need you. The tears seemed to hasten as he felt her grip loosen and the solitary drone of the monitor filled his ears. Keikawa-chan, he whispered, lowering his head so that his spiky long blonde hair hid his eyes. His free hand gripped her limp hand tightly as he felt something strong rise from within him. He felt overwhelmed with power, and before he knew it a scream escaped his lips and roots burst from the soil. The cave soon filled by trees, all surrounding the hospital bed his mother laid in, cherry blossoms blooming from the branches. Naruto looked around at what he just created, shock evident on his face, Tsunade mirroring his look from where she had been unintentionally thrown to. But when he turned to where his mother was, he saw the smile etched onto her lips. I'll never let you down, Ka-chan, Tu-chan, he choked, soaking in the serene look she wore. And Mokutan, Tsunade gaped, unable to fathom what had just smacked her into a wall. It was roughly 2 weeks later, and it found Tsunade sitting in her private study of the Senju clan compound. She sat relaxed with a saucer of sake in her hand and a sleeping Naruto's head on her lap. In her other hand was a file, one specifically that brought tears to her eyes, bringing up memories she had long since buried and tried her best to forget about. I guess it all makes sense now, Naruto-kun, she whispered, gently running her hand through his hair. What you awakened, your father's ability. So, a deep voice stopped her train of thought, sounding mirthful yet sorrowful. It seems you've found that old file and connected dots long forgotten, Tsuhime. Her eyes widened as she looked up, seeing a giant of a man with long spiky white hair. Jiraiya, she mumbled, before setting down her sake in the file, gently moving Naruto's head from her lap. When did you get back, she asked, hesitantly walking towards the man. Not long ago. Seeing you has always been my first stop when you were home, he smiled, though it seemed a bit forced. I guess it was only a matter of time before you found out who he really was, he sighed, closing the gap between them and pulling her against him in an embrace. He felt her shake as sobs immediately began to rack her form, and she wrapped her arms around his waist, pulling him as tightly to her as she could manage. He hushed her, and she realized that he too was crying, mourning his lose as well. I know, I wish it was me instead of him who invoked the seal. It should have been me, he whispered, showing her a weakness she hadn't seen in years. If I wasn't out of the village, I could have stopped him, and his self-blaming path halted when she pulled just far enough away to pin him with a weak glare. You wouldn't have stopped him, he wouldn't have let you, and you know it, Baka, she choked, and his head fell to rest on her shoulder, finally letting the dam completely break, his large arms wrapping around her as he sobbed like a child, and rightfully so. Sannin no Jiraiya had lost more than a student and apprentice because of the attack, as had Tsunade. The sound of flesh hitting wood resounded throughout the clearing, a young Naruto beating his fists into the worn trunk of a tree. The young boy was going about his recently started routine, throwing the odd kick in, uncaring of the presence he sensed observing him. So, this is why Tsunade has to clean you up every evening, Gaki, the voice of Jiraiya asked, making the boy pause for only a moment before he continued on. The white-haired Sannin sighed, resigning himself to watching, figuring he might as well pick out the boy's faults and help him correct them. Tighten your stance a bit, you're making yourself open. Once again Naruto paused, however this time his stance became just over shoulder length apart. Jiraiya smiled at that. He understood why Naruto was acting this way. He himself had been very similar when things affected him in the past, quiet and focused, needing some way to physically vent his emotions. You know, the academy will be starting soon, but if you'd like I can teach you as much as you want. All I want, the blonde paused, standing normally, is to protect Menma, just like I promised. He turned, showing his blue eyes in a hardened state not usually seen in a 6-year-old as tears fell from them. Jiraiya stood from his sitting position, walking over to his godson and placed a comforting hand atop his head. Naruto, I'll teach you everything I know and then some, I promise. He smiled at the boy, earning a sad smile from the boy. But we need to talk about what you did the other day, and what it means. You mean the Mokutan, Jiraiya-ji? Naruto asked, earning a smile from Jiraiya at how quickly he connected the dots, just as intellectually sharp as his father before him. That's right, it's an extremely rare technique, so rare that the only documented user was the Shodai, no one before or after him ever having it, until you, the Sannin answered, now sitting down in front of the boy bringing them to the same height. Until you master it, I want you to keep it hidden because it could put you in a lot of danger, Naruto was surprised at how serious Jiraiya was being. It wasn't something he often saw, but it earned the man a nod of understanding. But how will I master it if no one knows how to use it? He questioned, concerned that he may always have something to hide. Your Bachan is the granddaughter of the Shodai. As such he left scrolls for the family in case anyone awakened it. I've already begun reading those scrolls to help you learn, and when you're older she and I will give them to you to study, the Sannin explained, Naruto accepting his explanation easily. Can we start training now? The blonde asked, earning a small chuckle from the man. Yes, we can, Naruto, but let's give it a bit more time before we start with your Mokutan, he smiled, earning a determined nod from the boy. For now, we'll start with chakra control and refine your taijutsu. Have you ever heard of the style your father used? The blonde boy shook his head in the negative, earning a small nod from the man. I think he would have wanted to see you use it, so it's where we'll begin. The blonde gave him a nod, and the godson and godfather set off on their training, both determined to push Naruto's limit and see the boy make his wish come true. I won't let anyone I care about ever be hurt again, he swore to himself, listening intently to what Jiraiya was explaining about his father's style. 7 years later, Naruto found himself thinking of that promise he made himself as he looked at the reflective metal of his headband. He moved his finger to trace the engraved leaf before he wrapped the black cloth around his head, his spiky blonde hair now slightly slicked back. He looked out over the horizon from atop the Hokage monument, his father's stone-carved head to be specific. On either side of him stood two of his former classmates, now teammates, and friends. The first was a girl with brown hair allowed to flow freely down her back. Her eyes were black and her skin pale, showing a bit of a contrast with the violet high-collared sleeveless shirt, gray pants tucked into brown shinobi sandals and red forearm covers she wore. On the back of her shirt, the Uchiha clan fan symbol was emblazoned proudly. This was Uchiha Izumi, clanswoman to two of his best friends and top female student of the academy. The other was Hana, the heiress of the Inuzuka clan and one of Naruto's oldest friends. The girl also had long tamed brown hair kept in a ponytail, tattoos on her cheeks that were customary for any Inuzuka who had been given their Nikken companion. She wore a black tank top that was slightly covered by a tan vest, black skin-tight shorts and a matching pair of black shinobi sandals. Hana was very skilled in her clan's secret jutsu, a key point being the fact that she was given 3 companions instead of just one. She was also studying the arts of a medical specialist. I wonder if Shushui and I and Itachi-kun have heard we graduated yet, Izumi wondered aloud, smiling as she enjoyed the setting sun. They haven't, but I'll be sure to tell my son that you passed, Izumi-chan. A teasing voice made the girl jump and spin around with a crimson blush. I'm sure you'll let your big brother know, a woman with black hair teased, her matching black eyes seeming mirthful. Mikoto-sama, what are you doing here? Izumi asked, as Naruto stared at his mother's best friend in confusion. Mikoto-ka-chan, you're our Jounin-sensei, aren't you? The woman smiled warmly and nodded at the blonde, enjoying the title she had earned from him. That is right, Naruto-kun. I, Uchiha Mikoto, will be in charge of Team 7. A wide smile came to her face, as she gave them a wink and thumbs up. I can't wait to see what my cute little genin are made of, she giggled, earning a determined look from Naruto as the two girls' sweat dropped. But why were you chosen for us? Don't you have things to do with the clan? Izumi asked, earning a small smile from her clan's matriarch. My husband is the clan head, as appointed by my father, she reminded the young Uchiha. Besides, who better to train you with that Sharingan of yours while Shushui-kun is busy? And I did promise to look after Naruto-kun, and we can't forget my little protege Hana. I'm the best suited to train her with medical ninjutsu. All 3 genin smiled at the recognition Mikoto gave them, looking forward to working under the woman. Now then, you 3 should go and rest for the night. Tomorrow I'll be putting you through your first test as a team. All 3 saluted energetically, making the Uchiha matriarch giggle and then smile as she watched them leave in their own ways. Hana leaving by simply strolling off, her 3 Nikken in tow, most likely taking it easy because of the test in the morning. Izumi used a shunshin, slightly surprising Mikoto that she had already learned it, most likely from her brother older than her by 2 years. Lastly, Naruto just simply sat down face towards the slowly setting sun, not actually leaving and confusing her to a degree. Is everything okay, Naruto-kun? She asked, the blonde-haired boy she thought of as another son. I just wanted to sit here and watch the sunset, Mikoto-sensei. He earned himself a frown from the black-haired woman, having grown rather accustomed to the honorary ka-chan suffix he had been adding to her name. But she also knew he still thought of her in such a way, and the bond of a student and sensei was very important. Do you think they'd be proud of me, sensei? He nearly whispered, the Uchiha's frown deepening knowing who he meant. She didn't hesitate for a moment to sit down next to the boy, and wrap her arms around him in a comforting embrace. Both of them would be unbelievably proud of the young man you have become, how diligently you work, the way you look after your Ochuto, and becoming the rookie of the year thanks to your studies. There's no doubt in my mind, Naruto-kun, she whispered in a soft, gentle tone. Mikoto pulled away slightly, and wiped the tear from his cheek, smiling when he smiled at the gesture, even if there was sadness still present. I'm going to head home, but promise me no more questions like that. You know they loved you, and even in death their love can reach you and guide you, she said, standing, before leaning back down to kiss his forehead as she often did. Don't be up here too long. I wasn't kidding that I'm going to test you 3 tomorrow, and I promise I won't go easy. The blonde blushed slightly at the gesture of affection, but agreed to her instruction nonetheless and watched as she disappeared in a shunshin as Izum had. Naruto turned his blue eyes to the setting sun once more. I promise, Ka-chan, Tu-chan, I'll make my dream come true. I'll find peace for the shinobi world. His eyes hardened slightly as he spoke to himself. Again, the blonde called, sitting in the lotus position shirtless with his eyes closed. Across from a seemingly mini version of the blonde but with crimson red hair, who glared at him with violet orbs. The smaller version was upside down on his back, his butt against the wall as if he just rolled down it. Don't give me that look, Otsuro, you're the one who demanded I train you. The crimson-haired boy spun himself around, coming to his feet with a pout on his face. But all you've had me doing is walking up this stupid wall with chakra, and I can't even do that, the boy pouted, earning a smirk from the elder brother. Your chakra wells are half the size of my own and you're 6 years younger than me. You need this more than anything else, Menma-chan. The slightly older Naruto opened his eyes, revealing the piercing blue eyes he was becoming famed for. You master this and the next step and I promise to teach you the Hakadori Ken. His eyes shutting once more after seeing his brother seemingly satisfied with the compensation offered and running off to his task, right up the wall. For him to only, moments later, roll right back down the wall much to his own ire. Nonetheless, the boy shot back up to do the same thing several more times, getting slightly higher with each try. The door to the training facility opened, bringing both Uzumaki's attention, though you wouldn't be able to tell from Naruto not moving or opening his eyes. Naruto-kun, Uchiha Izumi-chan is here looking for you, a woman with short brown hair in a gray kimono said, smiling at the unmoving blonde. Send her in, Shizune-chan. Thank you, he responded, before standing up and looking towards Menma, who seemed to be getting higher and higher every try. The blonde smiled at that before turning his head as the brunette Uchiha walked into the room, his smile growing in size. Izumi walked in, not much having changed with her appearance-wise, aside from a red and white string hanging tied from the kunai in her thigh holster. The girl blushed slightly at seeing the shirtless form of the blonde, doing her best not to look at his defined abs as she greeted him. Good morning, Naruto-kun. I see Menma-chan has pressured you into training him today, she said with a small giggle, earning a bashful look from the blonde as he rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, I figured it would be a good time for me to train on what the Okami tribe left me with. But he's not been much help to my concentration, he chuckled, watching as this time the boy did an elaborate flip from the wall before charging it again. You mean your new summons? Didn't you just get the contract a couple missions back? Her head titled to the side slightly, making Naruto smile at her action. He nodded. I did, but since I was already a toad summoner and unconsciously broke my deal with Gamabunta-sama, Shiro-sama has promised to teach me some of the stronger techniques to make up for me having to deal with Erosenin. He chuckled slightly, remembering how furious his godfather had been. Anyway, was there something you needed, Izumi-chan? The girl, Naruto unaware of the fact, blushed at the suffix he used and smiled. Mikoto-sensei asked me to come get you. She wants us to meet at the training grounds for something very important. Naruto easily nodded, grabbing his long-sleeved black shirt and pulling it over his head, proudly displaying the symbol of the Uzumaki clan on his back. Otsuro, keep it up, I have to go meet my team, the blonde called, throwing a kunai just above where the boy flipped from on the wall. Get back up there and use that to mark your progress. Menma smirked seeing how high the kunai was, almost near the ceiling, before smiling foxily at his brother. Sure thing, be safe, Oniai-chan. That earned him a thumbs up from the exiting blonde, making him smile a bit more before he returned to his task. Naruto stopped just outside the door, in front of his weapon rack, and grabbed the katana hanging there. He smiled as he unsheathed it slightly, just checking the blade, before slinging it over his shoulder by the red and white string that held it there firmly. Ready when you are, Izumi-chan, he smiled, and began leading the way through the Senju compound that Tsunade had raised them at. Any idea what sensei wants us for on our day off? Izumi shrugged at the question, having wondered the same, but was waved off when she asked the woman herself. Not sure, but I guess you already figured it's important if she's calling us on our day off, as they exited the Shinto-styled pagoda manor, immediately taking to the trees. The compound of the Senju was not only surrounded but also slightly hidden in the forest that encompassed the ground. It was also beneficial that it was on the other side of the training grounds, making it a rather short commute for the pair. When the two came into the training grounds, they were met with the sight of their sensei in her normal Anbu-styled attire, and their third teammate, surrounded by her 3 pups. Both women smiled at their arrival, before the pups made a beeline towards the blonde, tackling him to the ground, yipping happily as he laughed. Hey guys, I know it's been a whole day since you saw me, he chuckled, moving his hands over their fur. I swear, they're more excited to see you than me some days, Hana giggled, making the 13-year-old blonde chuckle more before she called them off. Hello Naruto-kun, Izumi-chan, I'm sorry for calling you 3 here today, but I wanted to give you these, she said with a smile, handing each child a slip of white paper with writing all over it. These are your passes into the Chunin exams. See Chunin exams? Izumi questioned, her eyes widening as she read the location of the exams. But sensei, it says here they're taking place in Iwagakure, the brunette Uchiha yelped in surprise, earning a slightly tense nod from the matriarch. That's correct, some of you may have heard that Sandame-sama has been in talks recently with Tsuchikage Dano for an official truce. Part of that will be a Chunin exam within both our lands, this year's being in IWA, which I took the liberty of nominating my cute little Jenin for at the Jounin Council meeting. She smiled proudly at the stunned trio. Mikoto-sensei, don't you think me going to IWA will be a bit terse, given how much they hate Tuchan? The blonde asked, showing a rare bit of worry to his teacher. Mikoto shook her head in the negative. While there are some that may hate your father for his actions against the Wagakure during the last war, the fence-sitter has sworn that you'll be safe as long as you remain in their village, so long as it's during the exams. She noticed Naruto sigh, but he immediately gave her one of his most confident looks. Then I guess I'd better show them what Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto is capable of. Mikoto smiled at his claim, knowing full well the boy was far more powerful than his years would make you believe. Not only had she been training him, but Sharingan no Kakashi and 2 of the Sannin had been training him as well. Shurshui and Ai-chan and Itachi-kun will be so surprised, Izumi remarked happily, mentioning 2 of the blonde's best friends and sparring partners. Actually, your brother and Itachi-kun will be a part of our guard detail. Hokage-sama added 2 guards to our requirements of participating. Mikoto smiled at the giddy girl, most likely due to the fact she'd be able to travel with her crush, which just so happened to be the matriarch's own son. When do we leave, sensei? Hana asked, looking up expectantly at the woman. Within the next 3 days, so that we may arrive before the beginning of the exams next week, she smiled, before pointing at the papers she had handed out. Keep those on you and sign them, we'll need them to enter a Wagakure, and this is official business with another nation, so I expect all 3 of you to remain on your best behavior. The 3 immediately saluted, earning a giggle from their leader, dismissed. Following the order, the 3 nearly jumped when she vanished in a puff of smoke. Kagebunshin? Hana asked, earning shrug from the blonde. She must still be meeting with the Hokage and sent a clone to tell us, Naruto guessed, a yawn escaping him. Well, I've got to get back to Menma. He's probably making it to the ceiling by now. He smiled with a wave before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Several miles away, an aged man in white robes with red accents smiled, a pipe in the corner of his mouth. He is quite the sharp shinobi, much like his father was, the man said, looking up to Mikoto, her black eyes fondly looking on as her team went on their way. He is much like his father, but anger him and his temper is as explosive as Kushina-chan's, and just as leveled as Minato-sama's, she admitted, stepping back to the front of the desk. I must admit, I was a little hesitant about letting you step away from the Umbu to take them under your tutelage, but all 3 have become strong in just a short time of 6 months, the man praised, blowing a cloud of smoke from his mouth. I have no doubt they'll do well in these exams and go on to be splendid shinobi, he smiled, the mystic ball phasing to a new image of the blonde now training with his crimson-haired brother. Thank you, Hokage-sama, Mikoto bowed, making the Sandaime, Sarutobi Hiruzen chuckle. No need for that, I've taken it upon myself to keep a close surveillance on our young Uzumaki brothers, and I appreciate you not mentioning that a full Umbu squad will be following them alongside your clansmen. She nodded in understanding. I'm not quite sure why Inoki Dano has extended his hand out in this manner, but I suppose maybe the old midget has grown tired of the wars as I have. Does his decision reflect throughout his forces is the question, however, Mikoto questioned, her Sharingan flaring to life at the thought of a betrayal. Exactly my thoughts, which is why I'm giving you explicit authority to kill any who try to harm your young ones excluding their exam opponents, she nodded. While she hated killing, she had no qualms doing so for her loved ones. A month and 5 days later, found Uzumaki Naruto standing with his katana drawn across from the granddaughter of the Sandaime Tsuchikage, Kuratsuchi. The fighting had yet to begin, but the blonde and the black-haired girl had quite a bit of a grudge between them since the beginning of the tests, hence why he was already in his strange kenjutsu stance. He really is the son of the Yondaime, and that Uzumaki girl. Just seeing that stance brings back memories of the Second and Third Shinobi World War. A short old man, Inoki the Sandaime Tsuchikage, said, his face tense. My granddaughter is no slouch, but he certainly has held back his true abilities until now, he commented, earning a sagely nod from the Hokage next to him. Naruto-kun is at the top of his generation in all but genjutsu. Those Uzumaki reserves hinder his ability to use them, but make him quite able to break them. Hiruzen smiled proudly, looking fondly to the serious blonde. Well, I suppose I should get my speech over with before they begin their battle prematurely, the old man chuckled, before surprisingly floating from his chair and standing on the banister of the balcony that was the Kage viewing box. A Wagakure, I would like to take this moment to thank our potential allies and guests of Konohagakure for appearing here today and testing the genin of our village in these exams. He paused, noting that all eyes aside those in the Colosseum proper were on him. Regardless of the outcome of this final match, we will be entering into a time of peace with Konoha, one that Hokage Dano and I believe will be prosperous for both villages in the many years to come. He was nearly surprised by the resounding cheers amongst his people and Hiruzen's. Now then, for the main event, Genin of Iwagakure Kuratsuchi and Genin of Konohagakure Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, you may begin. The moment the words left his mouth, both Genin charged forward, colliding in the center, Naruto pushing the girl back with his katana against her kunai. Both gritted their teeth, Naruto clearly winning with pure strength, but surprising her when a wolfish grin came to his face as sporadic bolts of lightning emanated from his blade. The result shocked her when the amplified sharpness of the blade began slicing into her kunai, forcing her to jump back and create some distance between them. She flipped one more time, making several hand seals as she did, landing in a crouch only to slam her hands to the ground. Doton, Doriyuso, she called, spikes of earth racing towards the blonde. Naruto made the ram's seal with one hand, holding his katana in a reverse grip with the other. Uzumaki Kenjutsu, Okami no Rakurai, Uzumaki sword style, lightning strike of the wolf, he growled, before making a large sweep with his blade that unleashed a lightning bolt with the head of a wolf. The bolt easily decimated her attack. However, when the girl got a clear view, she was shocked to see the boy gone, before he suddenly reappeared sliding in below her, landing the strongest kick she had ever felt against her jaw. She heard him call before another blonde appeared from a puff of smoke, shooting up to her with a flying knee right into her gut. It called before two more clones appeared from it, using the original clone as a springboard. The quickly landed twin elbow strike sent her soaring higher than the open roof of the stadium. Maki, she could still hear them yell. Rendon, the shout from behind her sent a chill down her spine before what she guessed was the original blonde slammed a chakra-enhanced kick in the center of her spine. The result was the girl making her own personal crater, able to feel several of her bones either shift or break. Unfortunately, looking up she realized there was no time to worry about that. The sight of an infamous ball of blue chakra in the boy's hand as he dive-bombed her prone figure. She closed her eyes, fully expecting the worst to become of her. However, as more than ample time for the jutsu to hit her passed, she opened her eyes. I'll only ask you once to forfeit. I'm sorry, but you won't be a match for me, the blonde proclaimed, the coldness in his deep azure orbs frightening her. It was like she was staring into the eyes of a predator, one that knew the battle was his. Proctor-san, I forfeit the match, Kuratsuchi whispered. The winner of the Chunin exams is Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto of Konohagakure no Sato. The announcement was met with a stunned silence, aside from a handful of Konoha shinobi cheering quite loudly. But as the infamous jutsu disappeared and the blonde offered a hand up for the girl, the crowd reacted with a slow-building roaring applause. Kuratsuchi for her part felt her cheeks heat as she witnessed the kind smile that came to the boy's face, his entrancing orbs now showing a surreal warmth instead of the glacial chill from a moment ago. Thank you for the match, Kuratsuchi-chan. I look forward to a spar in the future with you, he said, before vanishing in a body flicker. The girl watched the place he had been, not knowing quite exactly how to feel, especially not after he had been so kind to her at the end, when she had been so awful to him during the exams prior. Don't try to understand it, try as you may and Uzumaki will always surprise you, the proctor said from behind her, a smile on his face. I told you before the announcement even came, Kuro-chan, your hate not only blinded you, but made you underestimate him. The black-haired girl looked down sadly. I know, too-chan, I guess Ji-chan will be happy that I stopped trying to argue with him about it. She sighed, a small sad smile coming to her face as she found the blonde in the stands now, crowded by his loved ones. I look forward to the next spar, Naruto-kun. I won't lose again. Naruto appeared in the Konohagakure section of the viewing area, immediately swamped by all that had come to watch him fight. The fastest, and first to reach him was his sensei, the black-haired woman nearly knocking him down with a mighty hug. Naruto-kun, that was amazing. I'm so proud of you. The blonde chuckled. Thank you, Mikoto-ka-chan. I wouldn't be here without you, he said, hugging the woman back. That was a really nice combo, Ototo. You did well, a silver-haired young man, wearing the Konoha Jounin vest said, his tone rather lazy. But he knew exactly which style the blonde had derived that taijutsu technique from. Naruto smiled, as he was released from the hug. Thanks, Kakashi and I. He smiled wolfishly at the lazy Jounin. Before he knew it, his teammates, Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Menma as well as the Sandaime all surrounded him. That was a wonderful display, Naruto-kun. Throughout the entire finals, I'm proud to welcome you to the rank of Chunin, the elderly Hokage smiled, holding his pipe at the corner of his mouth. Naruto smiled wide, bowing his head slightly. Thank you, Sandaime-sama, earning a small chuckle from the Hokage. Momochi Zabuza wasn't one to shy away from any fight. He lived by the sword and would rather accept death's cold embrace than run from anyone or thing. It's that same philosophy that earned him the status of demon after prevailing in situations others would have met death in. But for the life of the famed swordsman, things seemed highly stacked against him with not an inkling of hope to his favor. Let it be said though, while the thought of running crossed his mind, the proud man steeled himself as he glared into the demonic whites of a partially transformed Jinchuriki, whom he just failed in assassinating. The wielder of the Kubikuri Hocho, despite his hardened eyes, let a somber chuckle escape his bandaged mouth. I suppose Mei-sama was right, he grunted, sinking low into his stance, hauling his massive blade over his shoulder with practiced ease. I'll wipe your existence from this world, Momochi, the transformed Yondaime growled, three tails flailing madly behind his crimson visage. Your defection I allowed to slide, but this attempt and working for that harlot, they've damned your soul, he ground out with a stomp, cracking the ground beneath his foot. I don't regret a damn thing, you miserable midget, Zabuza snarled, his latest insult being the final straw. He released a slow breath as he watched the true demon disappear in an ungodly burst of speed. He could read Yagura's movements, he could even counter them. But, he knew once that fist hit, his fate was sealed. Regardless, the master swordsman quickly threw his trusted blade to block the incoming attack. But his eyes widened, seeing the beast of Akage halted and unable to move. Mokutan, Yuwaka no Eni, and snaring roots, a voice unfamiliar to both men whispered, their trained ears able to pick up on it. Zabuza-san, I've been sent to aid your survival and escape. The black-haired Kirinin looked over his shoulder, met by a man only inches shorter than him. all identifying features hidden by a black hooded cloak. All either Kirin could make out was the bottom of a white mask, seemingly in the visage of a wolf. Konoha Umbu, the deep, angered voice of the Mizukage ground out, growling as he felt his chakra being negated by these strange roots. Mizukage Dano, I'd like to say it's an honor to meet you, but your reputation precedes you even in my village, the masked nin greeted, his voice devoid of any and all emotion or tone. You'll just be another body dead at my feet, the Mizukage growled, surprising the Umbu as he actually managed to break through his jutsu even with his chakra being drained. Sorry, Mizukage Dano, I have no plans of dying for a very long time, he smirked behind his mask, reaching for Zabuza's shoulder before both seemingly vanished into thin air. The Mizukage roared into the heavens, smashing his fists into the ground, anything but pleased with losing the two men. What the fuck? Zabuza looked around, finding himself still in the forest, but no longer able to sense the oppressive chakra of his former leader. How did we? His confusion was clear as day as he was unable to complete his sentence. It's a jutsu of mine, the Konoha Umbu panted, Zabuza quickly deducing that it was a one-time use type deal from how haggard the boy seemed. Ina Taicho, Ashi-senpai, mission accomplished, he grunted, still trying to catch his breath. It was at the moment the swordsman noticed the presence of two more Umbu, one with a dog mask and silver logic-defying hair, and the other wearing an ox mask with unruly, curly black hair. Zabuza nearly stuttered at the three crimson orbs gleaming through the masks at him. It was thanks to that odd number, and their defining features that he quickly deduced who had come from Konoha to help them. Mei-sama wasn't joking when she said Kanehigakura was actually sending us some real help, he said in an impressed tone, easily hefting his massive blade over his head and into its holster. Considering this kid used the famed jutsu of the Yondaime Hokage, and I'm staring down Sharingan no Kakashi and Shunshin no Sure. The revealed Kakashi sighed, lazily reaching up to remove his mask, revealing most of his features. I suppose there's no point in the masks for now, you two are free to remove them. I'm sure Izumi and Itachi have already done away with their own at the base. You're quite sharp for a supposed demon, the lazy Umbu captain said with his infamous eye smile. Zabuza chuckled, not sharp enough to detect this one behind me back there, or run away from a losing fight, he berated himself. Mei surely would kill him when she found out. Oh, don't be too surprised, Naruto-kun has a technique that makes him undetectable even to the greatest of sensory ninja, Kakashi continued on with his eye smile. Kaka and I, could you not talk about my abilities in hostile territory? The revealed blonde glared, Zabuza slightly surprised by the piercing blue eyes of his. Well, I'll be damned, the son of the Yondaime Hokage, Wakai Okami, young wolf, Zabuza whistled, flabbergasted that Konoha had sent this much muscle. Forgive me, Naruto-kun, Kakashi chuckled sheepishly. The older shinobi silently berated himself, slightly cursing his laid-back attitude when they were still quite literally in the danger zone. Naruto, choosing to ignore his adoptive brother, inclined his head towards Zabuza. After all, he knew this man's reputation and despite not liking some of his early work, he respected the man heavily. He was a true swordsman and shinobi. Zabuza-san, if you'd be so kind as to lead the way back, I believe it's time we take our leave. The four quickly did just that, Shursui smirking as he nudged the blonde slightly. So you stuck in that head of yours trying to figure out how to beat him? The Uchiha asked, earning a small smirk from the blonde. I'm looking forward to taking down someone as strong as him. Naruto landed in the center of a derelict small town, Kakashi, Shursui and Zabuza landing shortly after him. Kakashi had ordered him to take lead as their censor, and one of three members under him up for the title of Umbu Captain. The silver-haired shinobi found it surprising that three so young could be considered for the position, but having been younger when he too was given the promotion dashed most of that contradictory feeling. The experienced shinobi chalked it up to his protective nature when it came to his sensei's sons, and did as ordered, bequeathing his lead to the boys as he deemed fit. This the place, Zabuza-san? The implanted Sharingan wielder asked, just to confirm. Yeah, there's a high-level genjutsu in use to hide any chakra signatures from most sensors, but we've never had a Sannin-level gaki to test them on, the bandaged man chuckled, nudging the young blonde with the jibe. I haven't mastered the technique yet, Zabuza-san, hence why I chose to flee instead of fight your Yondaime, Naruto corrected, gaining a bit of a pondering look. Last Ainsama and I sparred, I believe my max time was 10 minutes and 30 seconds. Ainsama? The swordsman asked, earning a nod from the blonde. A former Sannin of the Okami tribe who once was a shinobi years before the era of the Warring Period, thanks to his mastery of the technique. He's transcended any other summoner and actually become a member of the tribe, he admitted, giving the group some context. The guy's over 100 years old and apparently a summoning wolf now. The idea seemed beyond comprehension to the fabled swordsman. Naruto sighed and nodded. I don't know all the details, but it's what I've been told by the leader of the tribe. Ain is what's known as a lone wolf and transcends even the power of the boss summon I can call. If you want to teach me some of Kiri's techniques I may be willing to tell you more in detail. Zabuza smirked at the blonde's bargain, having caught a glimpse of the katana the boy kept secured to his back. I may just take you up on that, he chuckled, looking towards the door of the main building when it suddenly opened, for people stepping out. The first were the two Konoha Umbu they had sent ahead of them, Uchiha Itachi and Izumi. Third came a man with spiky pale blue hair, wearing a black eye patch over one of his eyes and a green battle gi. The last person to step out nearly made Naruto's jaw drop. She was a woman, maybe a few inches shorter than himself, with long auburn hair that spiked out and down as it went. Her wildly tamed hair went in front of her pale jade eyes, though the visible one peered at the blonde with poorly hidden mirth at seeing him evaluate her. Her hair finished by having two bangs come down that framed her face while also crossing just above a healthy amount of cleavage. To say she was beautiful in her unique blue battle dress, with complements of armor and mesh, could be the understatement of the year in the blonde's eyes. Zabuza-chan, I'm glad our friends reached you in time. Am I to assume your self-imposed mission didn't go as planned? The question was asked while she still looked over the blonde, diplomatically filing any points of teasing away for a later time. No, Zabuza shook his head before pulling out a scroll. However, before Yagura was able to stop me, I killed Jinpachi and recovered his blade. You were right, Mei-sama. I shouldn't have taken the risk. The Umbu at his sides were slightly surprised by his respectful and remorse tone, not having gotten the impression he was capable of either. It's okay, your risk paid off for us in the end, and I'm thankful to our new allies for bringing you back in one piece. Haku-kun will be very relieved, she smiled, and the swordsman's head sunk slightly at the mention of his very young apprentice. May I have your names? She asked, turning her gaze back to the blonde after regarding the other two Konoha-nin. Uchiha Shursui, the black-haired boy, introduced himself, bowing his head slightly. Yo, Hataki Kakashi, the lazy shinobi added, displaying his flippant attitude perfectly. Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, the blonde bowed slightly, his azure gaze never breaking from her jade-green eyes. Mei nodded, walking towards the three with a bit of a sway to her hips. All three were shocked when she reached Naruto, and before he could react cupped his cheek and kissed the other. Consider that my thanks for bringing him back alive, she smiled brightly, happy to see her actions had indeed brought quite the blush to the stoic blonde's face. Alright, Naruto stuttered, missing the glare of his past genin teammate directed at the buxom rebellion leader. Izumi had come to harbor feelings for the blonde over the tenure of working with him, but hadn't said anything due to her inner conflict of also caring deeply for the Uchiha standing next to her. The future Mizukage smiled again. If it's fine with all of you, I'd like to have a meeting to discuss how you all will play into our plans. Specifically knowing your capabilities, she requested, earning nods of approval from each. Izumi-chan and Itachi-kun have already told me theirs, so you may show them to their quarters, she ordered, earning a nod from the stoic blue-haired man. A year, 365 days they had spent working with the rebellion. None came out of it unscarred. Even Naruto, with a healing prowess near that of their Shodai, had managed to sustain a literal scar. It went over his right eye, and branched in several directions, showing that it was indeed a right-on ability that had given it to him. Not only had it marred his once flawless sun-kissed skin, but the blue eye itself had fogged over as an effect of it, making him completely blind in the eye. But that hadn't hindered him as much as some would think. Having learned he was left-eye dominant, he had only had to adjust a slight amount to the odd new view. It did however leave him with a blind spot on his right peripheral, but some extra training with his sensory abilities over the span of a month, and he'd all but eliminated that hindrance. Many, even the Konoha Umbu, had been impressed with Naruto and his actions for the rebellion, having twice gone into single combat with the Yondaime Mizukage, pushing the complete Jinchuriki to a stalemate each time, the first time having been when he had lost his eye due to the interference of Kurosaki Raiga, the wielder of the legendary Kiba blades, another member of the Broken Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. Only 3 of the original 7 before the war broke out still drew breath: Zabuza, Raiga and Hashigaki Kisame, a Ronin who went missing a year prior to their arrival in Kiri. Naruto, having sparred with Zabuza many times and crossed blades with Raiga half as many times, was loath to face the third option. The man was apparently a chakra beast rivaling that of a bijou itself. The blonde was so lost in his thoughts, he nearly forgot his situation, but the cold steel cutting into his wrists was sure to remind him. He couldn't recall the number of days he'd spent in these shackles after his third battle against Yagura, but it had showed him something was going on. The underneath of the underneath was revealed to him, fully knowing that this war wasn't what it seemed. But he still didn't know exactly who was controlling things from the shadows. His imprisonment, however, hadn't been dull in the least. Yagura had taken every attempt to examine his bloodline, his abilities, and even had a bit of fun torturing him. Still, there was something about staring into those dead eyes of the Mizukage that told him he was being controlled, and the fact he could sense another presence within the shadows of his sessions. The heir to the Uzumaki chuckled, closing his eyes for a moment, and allowing his teacher's lessons to flow through him. Upon opening his eyes, 2 blue lines raced from the corners of his hairline, running to and past his jaw. A sharp, narrow triangle came down the center, stopping just as the tip came between his eyes, and finally, 3 bold whisker-like marks appeared on each cheek. This was the appearance of his Sennin Moto, his already piercing blue eyes glowing in the dark cell. Seems I won't need to be playing to their hand any longer. Backup is finally here, he growled, a wolfish grin marring his face as a look of near insanity settled over him. I'm going to kill that fucking midget today, the son of the Yondaime Hokage roared, shattering the chains that held him with but a flick of his arms. Outside of Kirigakure, the entire force of the rebellion was present, Mei and her commanders at the front accompanied by the Konoha-nin sent to their aid. Supporting them was a fresh battalion of Konoha Umbu, sent the moment word had reached Sarutobi Hiruzen that Naruto was captured. Everyone, prepare for the battle of your life. Today we take Kirigakure, roared Mei, fire burning in her eyes. Just before she gave the order to charge, an explosion rocked the central tower of the Mizukage, in the heart of the dilapidated village. The amassed army watched as smoke billowed into the air as a body was thrown from the top, manic laughter soon following. Those with trained eyes could pick out the shirtless form of Uzumaki Namikaze, Naruto being the source. "I'm gonna make you bleed, you damn midget," he roared before launching after the thrown body. "What are you people waiting for? Move!" Shursui ordered, knocking them out of the collective stupor of seeing the blonde on a rampage. The city was quickly thrown into utter chaos, at the very center of it being a full-out bout between Naruto and Yagura. If any got too close, the blonde was the first to kill them, be they enemies or dare them to interfere should they be allies. The blonde laughed, seeing blood running down the Mizukage's face from the onslaught he'd unleashed. Yagura glared at him through the crimson liquid, having never seen the Uzumaki this unstable or powerful, and the bastard hadn't even used a single jutsu yet. "Go ahead, you damn midget, call the Biju's power, so when I kill your miserable ass I can rip it straight out of you." The blonde's words struck the Jinchuriki hard. Never had anyone willingly wanted to pull his Biju from him, but it would seem the Kage had gone beyond too far in his torture. It was that moment alarms began to ring in his head. Mokutan Hijitsu, Jukai Koten. Naruto roared, clapping his hands together as the chakra surging became visible around him. The next moments took every soul by surprise, as the ground rumbled and a forest emerged within the city, completely changing the scape of the battle. Some buildings even having the misfortune to actually be completely ripped from their foundations. A certain auburn-haired kunoichi looked around her in awe, and Naruto-kun, she whispered, having never fathomed something like this. "It would seem he's breaking all his restraints. I honestly had no clue he could produce Mokutan of this scale myself." Kakashi mumbled. Shursui and Itachi left speechless. The sudden crackling of lightning broke them all from their reverie, a shocked gasp being the real reason it brought their attention. The small group of rebels turned to see Izumi, with the kiba blade stabbed through her gut. The lightning crackling from them illuminating the sadistic sneer of Raiga. Izumi, Shursui and Itachi howled, either able to accept the moments when she fell to ground limp. Raiga's manic laughter filled the now woodland streets. "I told that dumbass we should have killed that blonde Gaki and given him a funeral long ago. I guess I'll have to clean up his mess and bury you all," he chuckled, licking her blood from the now lightning-free blade. Mei moved to blindly charge in and make short work of the Kurosaki, but Kakashi's hand on her shoulder stopped her. "Don't, he just made this personal for two of the strongest Uchiha alive, they may kill you in their rage with no remorse." The leader of the rebellion was confused for only a moment before two blurs shot past them, reappearing before Raiga before one's kick went to the back of his kneecaps and the others went straight for his skull. Both landed with ease, resulting in the bewildered swordsman to be flipped sporadically. To finish off the tandem move, both enraged Uchihas slammed high axe kicks into the man's gut, completely knocking the air out of him before flipping away. "Get up," Shursui growled. "Get up, you bastard, I'm going to bring hell to life around you for hurting my dear Amuto." The tears in his eyes did nothing to hide or hinder his unbridled rage. He was going to make this man suffer. Kakashi looked pensive. "It would seem Raiga has allowed them both to unlock the next form of the Sharingan, the Mangekyo," he noted, before looking to Mei. "We need to move out and let them handle this, Meidano, we'll only get in the way." Mei nodded numbly, hating that she couldn't do anything for the girl who she had thought of as a friend. "I'll get to Ao and I'll order him here to see if he can do anything for Izumi. Search and destroy any loyalists still fighting," she ordered, receiving a nod from the silver-haired Umbu before he went on his way. Not that there should be many left after Naruto-kun's jutsu, she thought before jumping off. She had felt the extinguish of hundreds of lives as the jutsu raged. All it did was increase her worry for the blonde she had grown the closest to. Said blonde was thrashing a second-state Yagura, using a combination of taijutsu, kenjutsu and his mokutan. Thanks to his enraged Sennin Moto, he was granted far better control than usual over the technique, but he could gradually feel the effects even on his massive chakra wells. "Stand still, you bastard," Naruto growled, holding his hand out and clutching it as more branches sprouted from the ones near the Kage. It was an attempt to anchor him down, but the beastly Kage was proving to be able to smash through them with enough effort. "Fine, you want to play that way," the blonde growled, landing on the ground before running through several hand seals. Kuchios no Jutsu. The plume of smoke that filled the area was encompassing, a massive pure white wolf with red tribal markings throughout his coat. "So, it's the turtle again, Naruto Gaki," the wolf snarled, having had quite enough of this current foe. "Hi, Ainsama, forgive my summoning you without warning." The wolf looked up at his head to see the boy. "We'll kill him today, and then reseal his bijou. It would seem you've already thrown quite a lot at him. Why hasn't he fully transformed?" the wolf growled, looking back at the Jinchuriki before noticing his form starting to grow. "Seems you spoke too soon. I'm going to need you to get me close enough to him and pin him down for me," Naruto growled, his Sennin Moto wavering for a moment before being completely restored. His clone dispersing to immediately refresh the form. "That's the last one, need to make it count, Ainsama," he said, spinning his blade expertly, his former seemingly insane rage gone. "Then let's do it, Gaki!" The wolf roared, charging forward. Back with the two enraged Uchiha, they had quickly pushed Raiga onto the back foot, only holding back enough to prolong his suffering. After all, an Uchiha scorned was a demon incarnate. Two of them was enough to extinguish any life given the chance. Ao had already arrived, having pulled the limp form of Izumi away from harm's way, Chojuro having been sent to watch his back as he attempted to heal her. Just as Raiga attempted to push himself back to his feet with the Kiba blades, Itachi and Shursui appeared on either side of him, skewering him with their Tanto blades. To top it off, Itachi's eye began to bleed as black flames engulfed the head of Raiga. The blood-curdling scream to follow would haunt any man to cause it, but neither boy seemed to care as they jumped away. That was until the man burst into a pile of water, both of their tempers flaring. How damn it, where did he go? Shursui growled, his fists clenching tightly. All Itachi could do was growl. All of these emotions were beyond normal for the usually composed boy. Ao looked to them with an apologetic eye. Leave it be, he's not here anymore, and there's something bigger going on than that flunky, the advisor said, both Uchiha immediately glaring at him. But the fire left their eyes as they looked past him to the two gigantic beasts battling within the center of the village. He summoned him. You don't think? Shursui asked, looking to his fellow Uchiha. Itachi nodded. If Naruto has summoned Indano, then he intends to free the yondaime of his tenant. The normally silent young man looked to the battle somberly. It distinctively reminds me of the Kyuubi attack, almost too much. Naruto won't go out like his old man, and don't you start thinking he will team. Shursui gave his best friend a hard look, then turned his Mangekyo to Ao. Look after Miyamoto. Let's go, Itachi. We need to see if we can help him somehow. Itachi shook his head. It's already over, Shursui, he declared, distinctively staring at large beasts. Senpo, Uzumaki Hijitsu, Tentai Hack Fuin. Sage style, Uzumaki hidden technique, heavenly body 8 trigram seal. Everything and everyone seemed to halt, as the blonde's powerful voice coupled with the wolf's rung out through the artificial forest. It was almost instantaneous, the three-tailed turtle being pulled towards Naruto, into his chest. When the gargantuan creature was all but gone, the lifeless form of Yagura fell from high in the sky, rocketing towards the ground. After the beast was fully sealed, the wolf made to collapse before disappearing, Naruto falling from his place just as still and motionless as the yondaime. Naruto! Several voices rang out, but the first to reach him and stop his descent was Mei, the buxom woman, grasping him tightly to her chest as tears streamed down her cheeks. You damned idiot! Why would you do something like that? She cried, now more worried for the boy than ever before. For you, and your people, Kakashi said, appearing behind her, looking at his Otoro with a heavy heart. He's that much like his parents, to sacrifice himself for the prosperity of the ones he cherishes and even the ones he doesn't, he sighed, placing a hand on the boy's head. He's lucky it was the standby he did this with and not the 6 or higher. It may have killed him, Uzumaki or not. How does a boy so young have so much power? How does he even know how to seal a bijou? Mei cried, almost unable to accept the burden Naruto had taken on his shoulders. His teacher is Jiraiya of the Sannin. He has also studied under Tsunade, and Uchiha and myself. He smiled proudly at the still unconscious, selfless boy. And the reason he has so much power is because he has so much to protect. And Nisan the blonde in her arms groaned, weakly opening his eyes to look at the man. Is everyone safe? He cringed at the pain racing through his body. Kakashi's sad eyes gave him all the answer he needed. He hadn't been quick enough. We'll talk about that later, Otoro. For now sleep, he whispered, tapping the blonde's forehead, forcing the sleep upon the blonde. I'll carry him. Let's go check on the rest of my team. When they got back to where they had left the Uchiha, some were surprised to not see the body of Raiga anywhere. Only the small bundle of black flames burning in a puddle of water. The boys themselves were sitting on either side of Izumi, the two Kirin giving them a respectful distance. Mei looked to Ao for the verdict, Kakashi silently praying for a miracle, but the negative nod that followed was what he knew was coming. After all, one could only awaken the Mangekyo after a true loss, and somehow the eye or wielder could tell if it wasn't. Are you sure? Kakashi heard Shursui sniffle, the girl beneath him nodding weakly in a pool of her own blood. I am so sorry, Izumi. I can't apologize enough to you, Emuto, he heaved, gripping her hand with all his heartbreak. It's okay, Shursui and I-chan, she panted out, looking up and over towards the unconscious blonde. This way, he'll be able to see again, and I in some way, I'll be there when his dream comes true. The words nearly made Kakashi drop his Ochoro, a very sensitive memory of him getting his Sharingan assaulting him. He couldn't help the tear that fell down his cheek, both at the memory and the girl's wish. Itachi-kun, the weeping boy immediately squeezed her chilling hand, to let her know he was there. He couldn't trust his voice right now. Why, you have the most sense. I am trusting you to look after these bibakas and tell Mikoto Obasama that I'm sorry, too, she requested, and all he could do was nod repeatedly to the brunette Uchiha closest to his heart. Ao-san, I need you to take out Miyamoto's eyes and replace Naruto's damaged eye with one. The other I will keep, Shursui whispered, his voice devoid of any emotion as he looked somberly at the girl. None had noticed that Zabuza had appeared, being sure to silence his apprentice, a short brown-haired boy, as he took in what was happening. Zabuza-sama, what's happening? The young boy whispered, having mostly hidden during all the fighting. Zabuza knelt down beside the boy, a gentle hand on his small head. This is the life of shinobi, Haku. One moment you're there and the next you could be gone. It's unfortunate, and it hurts a lot, but it's our world, he whispered, not wanting to disturb the process as Ao did what was asked of him. A few moments later, Ao looked to the girl's brother, not offering him any pity as he knew it was unwanted. It's done, the other is here, he said, handing him a small vial. She doesn't have much longer left. Take as long as you need, Shisui-san. With that said, he stood and returned to his place, once more at a respectful distance. If you could all just leave me here with her, he silently asked, and Itachi was the first to stand, giving her hand one more squeeze before letting go. He walked away quietly, his face a mask devoid of anything notable. The rest followed shortly, none intending to belay the boy his simple request. From the moment they all left, to the moment Izumi drew her last breath, Shisui sat and wept with her gently held to his chest. A week later, bleary eyes opened to blurry white paneling above him. Things began flooding into his mind, and the boy shot up, ignoring any pain he felt as his hand went to his right eye. The orb widened, when he suddenly found himself able to see his fingers before his eye. How, he hoarsely whispered, and then memories, not his own, assaulted him, and like that tears began to flow from his eyes. So, I suppose there's no point in telling you, a hollow voice questioned, and Naruto looked up to see the emotionless face of Shisui, an unshed tear in his eye. The shaggy-haired boy stood suddenly, putting his hand on the blonde's shoulder. It was her dying wish to give you her eye, so that you could see again, and in some way she could be there when your dream came true, he spoke softly, and lightly as to not hurt his friend. It was the last thing he wanted to do. He was tired of hurting, and seeing people hurt. Not hearing a word from the blonde, he looked only to gasp at seeing a mangekyo swirling in his sister's gift to the blonde, tears pouring from it. She's giving you something many none Uchiha before you have lusted for. Promise me you'll take care of it, he said, not really asking. And no matter what, I want you to swear to me that you'll make our dream a reality. His answer came in two parts, possibly the most determined look he personally had seen in Naruto's eyes. For Izumi, the blonde whispered, making Shisui smile somberly. The curly-haired Uchiha bent down slightly and hugged his best friend, before standing straight and excusing himself. Naruto, left alone, found himself staring out the window of the hospital, one building spared by his rampage. He began thinking back to his fight, and not just the fractals of images the Sharingan had given him of Izumi's last request. The way he was, there was no way he could have possibly done anything faster, and as much as he wanted to blame himself for Izumi, he knew deep in his heart it would only insult her memory, and he refused to do that. He was brought from those thoughts by the door opening behind him, catching the hue of auburn hair in the reflection of the glass window. I'm glad to see you awake, Naruto-kun. Tsurumi wasn't an often meek woman, but standing before this man, it made her so. But she steeled herself, knowing how much she owed the selfless man, and sat down gingerly beside him. The blonde looked her over, giving off his first smile since opening his eyes. I suppose I may have gone a bit overboard on your village, he joked, a small smirk playing at his lips. He was rewarded with warm laughter from the girl, seemingly washing away any prior nerves. It's okay, she smiled, looking out over the place she had called home so long ago. Many of us on the side of the rebellion have many bad memories here, myself included. A civil war does that, I suppose. Not to mention the bloodline purge. It will be a welcome step to renovate our home and breathe new life into it, I think. The words earned a small smile from Naruto, but it turned to a look of shock when he felt her gently clasp his hand. Thank you for everything you've done for us. I couldn't repay you in 1,000 years if I tried, she whispered. Naruto, for the first time in his life, taking notice of the blush gracing a woman's cheeks. For killing Yagura, you gave us our freedom. For sealing the Sanbai within yourself, you saved a member of our next generation the burden. For all of us you, a Konoha shinobi, were the hero we all needed, she smiled, before catching his cheek with her lips just like when they had met. I admire you greatly, Naruto-kun, and if you'd allow me with the time you'll be remaining here, I'd enjoy getting to know you, as much of you as I can. Naruto chuckled, a blush now gracing his own cheeks. I'd like that very much, Mei-chan. Promise me you'll visit before too long, Mei whispered. It had been another month that the Konoha Anbu had stayed. In that time, she had grown even more attached to her village's hero, spending nearly every moment not in meetings with him. She felt her face heat as the blonde gave her that wolfish smirk, gently brushing a strand of her long hair with his rough hand. I will, and if there's anything you need you have one of my seals, he smiled, clasping both her hands in his. It'll take a lot of chakra to use it over such a great distance. But I'll make the sacrifice for you, he chuckled, earning a cute pout from the Godame-elect. She reached up and slapped his chest, earning more laughter. You're lucky, I know you're kidding. The kunoichi then moved her hand over the seal now hidden by his gear. Keep it hidden, some would want to use you for its power, not to mention your own. In response the blonde cupped her face in both his hands before placing a kiss on her forehead and then moving to her lips. Ao and Kakashi abruptly fainted, and that was before they deepened the kiss. Itachi and Shisui gave small smiles, both happy for their dearest friend outside of their clan. Zabuza chuckled, breaking the moment by walking up and clapping the blonde on his back. The Mizukage and Wolf broke the kiss, the Umbu grinning at his new-found friend while May glared heatedly at the swordsman. Now Mizukage-sama, I think you two broke the blatant and closet perverts, he chuckled, jabbing a thumb over his shoulder at the two. The Mizukage, for her part, could only roll her eyes before happily taking the slightly taller blonde in an embrace. I'll miss you, Naruto-kun, she whispered into him, nuzzling her face into his warm chest. I'll miss you too, Mei-chan, he smiled before brushing his hand through her hair one last time before stepping back. He walked towards the faint Kakashi, hefting him over his shoulder with surprised ease. Alright guys, I've got Kakabaka. Let's meet up with the rest of the battalion on the border. The Uchiha nodded simply, taking up position behind their second-in-command and placing their hands on his shoulder. Till next time, Zabuza, Mei-chan, he gave them his signature smirk, disappearing with all 3 teammates in tow, just like they'd never been there to begin with. You're thinking about him banging you, aren't you? Zabuza jibed, noticing the pink blush become scarlet before all hell broke loose. Ending with Zabuza in the hospital for a whole week. Naruto rolled his eyes, listening to Kakashi and Sure go on and on about the perverted sage's new book just announced. They weren't even an hour away from the village at this point, and all the two could think about was going to pick up their own copy. But the blonde did have to admit, it at the very least took Shusui's mind from the late Izumi, and he was thankful for that. Perverts, Itachi huffed, earning a chuckle from the blonde. If I remember right, Mikoto-sensei said something about finding those same books in your room. His teasing grin instantly made his rival deflate proportionately. Damn it, Kaa-san, he growled, the last thing he needed was his annoying blonde best friend knowing something or anything like that. Naruto laughed boisterously, Itachi allowing himself to see the contrast between his friend's eyes. Has it been giving you any trouble? Naruto calmed at the question, not even having to ask what the stoic boy meant. No, for some reason it's not giving me the same problem Kakashi has with his own, where I would need to cover it, he sighed, placing his hand over the eye, experimentally activating it. It's rather odd to see things like this. His inquisitive nature was plain to see. Itachi knew it was why the blonde was always working on something new. Kaa-san will probably be excited at the opportunity to train you again. I think the life of a stay-at-home mother has given her some depression, Itachi chuckled, earning a scoff from the blonde. I never did expect Mikoto-sensei to actually retire to a point. She loved being a shinobi. Naruto shook his head, remembering times he and his old team had been on missions with her. Itachi nodded. My father demanded as much. He'll have something to say about your new eye as well, the heir warned, making Naruto growl. The blonde wasn't very fond of the Uchiha patriarch. Something just never sat right with him about the man. Before he could voice as much, Shursui spoke up. He says anything, and I'll kill him, the young man promised, flaring his mangekyo for extra measure. Man, that's kind of badass. I need to learn how to do that, Naruto, as flippant as ever, said, looking in awe at the eyes. Shursui and Itachi both face vaulted at the way he ignored the comment, Kakashi only chuckling, beyond used to Naruto's antics. I personally can't wait to tell Tsunade-sama about Ototo's new girlfriend, he chuckled, immediately ducking under the katana thrown like a kunai at his head. His breathing hitched however as he felt a very memorable shift behind him, looking out the corner of his eye to now see Naruto's mixed-matched stare glaring at him like an oni. I will end you Ero and I, he growled, and Kakashi couldn't help but to compare him to his sensei, back when the Umbu captain was much younger. The Hataki held his hands up in surrender. Fair enough, he chuckled nervously. When had his little brother gotten so scary? Regardless, don't worry about Tusama. Kaa-san will put her foot down and that will be the end of it, Itachi said, earning a scoff from the blonde. Your old man couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag. The Uzumaki heir insulted, Itachi shrugging in response. The old saying is don't anger a Senju or Uchiha, the Uchiha replied, earning an iro from his rival. And don't underestimate an Uzumaki, the blonde countered, earning a touche in response. However, all four quieted seeing the village gates come into view, along with the battalion of shinobi that had traveled ahead of them. Standing there just able to see the home they hadn't in many months was enough to bring a smile to each of their faces, even if a tinge of sadness could be seen for their ally that hadn't made it back with them. Before any could take another step forward, Naruto was suddenly bombarded by a crimson and blonde blur, causing a loud grunt to emit from him, silently noting the steady hand on his shoulder that prevented him from falling. Nisan, the crimson-haired blur had cried, followed shortly by a Naruto-chan, from the blonde. Sorry Gaki, they've been waiting at the gates ever since word came back you were returning. A voice he already knew spoke from behind him, earning a smile from the blonde at the arrival of his family. It's okay, Ero-senin, I've been waiting for this too, the blonde chuckled, returning the embrace of Menma and Tsunade respectively. Itachi was in a very similar situation, being fretted over by his Kaa-san, and bombarded with questions from his Ototo. Shursui and Kakashi stood to the side, both smiling fondly at the scene. Hey there tall, dark and handsome, a familiar Inuzuka Hana, jibed as her hand smacked the rear of Shursui. The Uchiha was immediately scarlet in color, chastising her for what she had done, only inciting a giggle from the girl. Good to see you not brooding after such a long mission, Kaka-chan. Kakashi gulped at the oddly seductive tone in his ear. It would seem he has already been found, Kami dammit. The Hataki chuckled nervously. Oh hail, Anko-san, he gulped when a kunai appeared at his neck, releasing a small eep sound. Oh, does Anko-chan have to teach her Inubaka how to properly address her again? The tone had Jiraiya giggling perversely as he scribbled in his ever-present notebook. And now, Anko-chan, please don't go to any extremes, Kakashi gulped, shuddering when the woman promised to find him after her shift before disappearing. He sighed. That was more than enough time for him to get his book and disappear before the snake woman could find him. The silver-haired shinobi only wished he could understand what he had done to attract the, admittedly sexy, crazy woman's attention to such loyalty. Kakabaka, Naruto shook his head with a laugh, as Menma finally released him, being the last to do so. Nisan, what happened to your eye? It's black like Itachi and II and Shisui and Ii's, the rambunctious crimson-haired academy student noted, noticing his question had brought a somber look to his brother's eyes. Not only his, but Itachi and Kakashi's as well. Shisui looked like he wanted to nearly cry. The eldest male Uchiha was very aware of how close his baby sister had been to the youngest Uzumaki, often having trained him while Naruto was too busy with missions, even taking him on numerous dates for ramen. It was why Shisui moved to the boy, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder, despite the raging sadness biting at him. A lot of bad things happened on our mission, Menmakuen, he whispered, struggling to find the right way to put it. But every adult had caught on, Mikoto and Hana having fresh tears well up in their eyes. Shisui had not wanted to tell either of them in writing, feeling it to be the wrong way. Izumiyamoto didn't make it back, he choked out, seeing the tears freely pouring from Menma's violet eyes. But Naruto had lost his eye prior to that, and her wish was to let him use one of hers in its place. His tears were free-flowing as well as he spoke his sister's last wish. But Menma surprised him as he often did and just hugged him, the life out of him in fact. It was a welcome action to the heartbroken brother, and many, even the teary-eyed members smiled however small at the scene. The young Sasuke was surprised to see so much emotion not only from his cousin, but his brother as well. He didn't like seeing that pain on Itachi's face. For some reason, he really didn't like seeing his rival Menma so sad, and either. He wasn't close to Izumi, but he was close to those three and Naruto. The tears he shed were for them, not the girl lost he didn't have an attachment to. Mikoto left her son's side, walking up and taking Naruto into a hug that surprised the boy, Hana joining soon after. If anyone knew how close Naruto was to his female genin teammates, it was her, and just being in contact with him the Uchiha matriarch could feel the restrained storm of emotions within. I'll start your training in the Sharingan as soon as you're ready. We'll make sure Izumi-chan's last wish is honored no matter what, she vowed, earning a silent nod from the boy as he returned the embrace, and wept silently. The Sandaime stood a fair distance ahead of the small group, his eyes remorseful at the scene. Anything like this always weighed heavily on him. The loss of any shinobi was his responsibility as the leader, protector, and, in his mind, father of the village and her people. Kakashi had informed him a month prior, while Naruto was recovering, and decided to honor Shisui's wish to allow him to tell people. It was the least he could have done for a team who had sacrificed so much for their prosperity and new alliance. Team Inu, report to my office when you're done here for your debriefing, he ordered, earning nods from each of them. So, you've mastered the Shodai's technique to such an extent. It's remarkable, Naruto-kun. He smiled, then looked over the rest of the team. Each of you preformed above and beyond the call of duty. You'll be granted SSS rank pay for it, on top of the agreed-upon amount sent from the new leadership of Kirigakure. He smiled, all four gaping at the announcement. That was enough pay for any of them to retire for a few months and live the highest of lives. However, due to the extent of loss and everything that has affected this team, I'm forcing you all to step down from UMBU status for a time of at least 2 years. Now this surprised all of them even more. It wasn't often an entire squad was demoted. Especially not one of their level and overall power, not even to mention their success rate. What of the council, Hokage-sama? They'll surely fight you on this, Shisui noted, not in the least bit against the demotion after all he'd been through. They can kiss my wrinkled ass, their influence does not outweigh my decision. But that does bring up another point, he said, staring at the blonde. Your tenant will be classed a SSS rank secret. If anyone outside of this room speaks of it, they're to be put to death immediately. Unless you deem them trustworthy enough to share the information, of course, the Sandaime said, earning a nod from the blonde. You'll also be present in the next Shinobi Council meeting. You've long since earned the right to everything within your parents' estate, and terms for you to take up duty as clan heir will be decided. I thought I was already in possession of everything, Naruto questioned, earning a chuckle from the aged Kage. You have been given what I, or rather the council, hasn't been able to prevent my students from teaching and giving you, Hiruzen said, packing his pipe with tobacco before lighting it and taking a puff. There is much within your mother's and father's estate that will change the face of this village. Secrets will come to light long since kept from the time of the knighting. Prepare yourself, the meeting will be in a month's time. Naruto and the Uchiha stood shell-shocked at the victorious eyes of the Hokage. It was like seeing a man place check after such a long battle of strategy. Kakashi knew it wasn't just check, but in fact would be checkmate. To the greatest darkness the village has been influenced by since Uchiha Madara. Being Jiraiya-sama's eyes within the village at all times had given him enough to surmise as much. Alright team, you heard Hokage-sama, dismissed, Kakashi said, his lazy mask ever present. However, he was completely intent on going and buying his new book. He was happy to leave what was to come out of his hands, as that was none of his business unless made so. Plus, he had a snake woman to escape. A week later found Naruto relaxing in the Senju training ground he and Menma had always trained in, thanks to living with Tsunade. He was laying back on iron, having trained quiet brutally with the original Okami-sennin for most of the morning. He was calmly watching as Menma trained himself, fighting several clones atop the large pond. The blonde was silently proud that his academy student brother was proficient enough to water walk, being both in Uzumaki and Jinchuriki. Chakra control would always be the boy's nemesis. He chuckled softly, wondering how much longer he'd wait before beginning to teach Menma their father's famed technique, the Rasengan. After being forced to leave the ranks of Umbu, Naruto had taken to wearing an attire similar in part to his old one. For his shirt, he wore a plain and simple long-sleeved black shirt with a turtleneck. However, what made it unique was the fact it lacked the right sleeve, similar to the attire some Iwanin wore. Proudly emblazoned on his back was the Uzumaki clan symbol, however it had changed, as now it included a blue lotus overlapping its bottom half, taken from the Namikaze clan symbol his father was born to. His pants were black as well, taped at the ankles and tucked into a pair of black shinobi boots. These boots were special because of the tanto holstered in the calf-high material. On his right forearm was a black steel bracer, a silver 3D wolf's head emblazoned on it signifying his tie to the tribe. It had actually been a gift from the tribe leader, Shiro-sama, the only wolf Ein answered to. The blonde chuckled when he heard his brother's cheers, having beaten down 40 clones without losing focus on controlling his chakra once. It was hard for even Naruto to believe how quick his Otoro had been growing and learning. He wasn't even 9 years of age yet. Ibaka no Mema, want to spar? Naruto raised his brow at the new voice, before smiling at the sight of his old sensei, and her youngest. Sasuke-chan, be nice to Mema-kun, you wouldn't want your Aniki beating you up, would you? Mikoto teasingly scolded her adorable son. The boy instantly paled, looking over to the relaxing Uzumaki and his wolf, who smirked wolfishly at him. You two have fun, Naruto-kun, and I will be training, so be sure to stay vigilant of your surroundings. Any? Hi, Mikoto Onibaba-sama. The Uchiha matriarch only giggled as Naruto paled when his Otoro called the scary woman a demon granny, but he was further shocked when the only response Mikoto gave was to dote over the loudmouthed baby brother of his. Even Sasuke was looking at his mother as if she had grown a second head, but knew better than to question her, and went in a sprint at the crimson-haired boy. The spar quickly devolved into a tussle, making Naruto and Mikoto chuckle as they watched the boys roll around. Well, they'll be busy for the next 2 days if we let them. Activate your Sharingan, it's time to work. Naruto did as commanded, but was surprised when an Umbu wearing the mask of a monkey appeared, bowing before him. Naruto Taicho, Hokage-sama has requested your presence as soon as possible, please do not delay, the blonde sighed, before nodding at the man and thanking him. Forgive me, Mikoto-sensei, I now summon you again tomorrow morning, Naruto said, picking up his katana and securing it to his back. You can try, I'm taking the day off Gaki. Train with the Uchiha then, the wolf grunted, dispersing in a cloud of smoke. Well then, I guess I'll see you tomorrow, Naruto-kun. Mikoto smiled, earning a small smile from the blonde. When your meeting comes, just ignore my husband, he's always cranky, she giggled, once again proving to Naruto she was just a loyal woman, and not overly fond of the man she was married to. Until then, sensei, and as you say, he smiled, before vanishing in a lightning shunshin. She smiled. Of her 3 students, Naruto had always been her strongest and fastest growing. At the age most genin went through their first failure of a Chunin exam, the blonde had already mastered the use of 3 elements, and his father's Rasengan, not mentioning his Mokutan or summoning contract, or the Kenjutsu she had helped him with. She knew with her Uchiha students passing, the girl had given Naruto the final nail in the coffin of any foolish enough to face him alone. I wonder how strong those 2 will grow, she smiled, looking at the 2 children, one resembling her and the other resembling her dead best friend, Kushina. You'd be so proud of your sons, Kushi-chan, Minato Baka. She smiled to the heavens, hoping those 2 could see them all now. Naruto appeared in the window of the Hokage's office, Sarutobi beyond used to this behavior from a handful of his shinobi. Itachi, Shursui, what are you guys doing here? The blonde asked, earning serious looks from both of them. Seeing an equally serious look from the Hokage, Naruto shut the window behind him, signaling to the hidden Umbu to vacate the room before activating silencing seals. It's the hawk, isn't it? Hiruzen nodded. Among other things, Meidano has been inaugurated as the Godain Mizukage and will be here in a week's time to sign the alliance pact. You will be assigned as her protection to accompany your allies from the rebellion who will come. But, Itachi-kun and Shursui-kun have brought new movement to my attention. His wizened eyes hardened at this, but nearly widened in shock when Naruto flicked out a right unenhanced kunai, the body of an Umbu with an unmarked mask falling down with a hole through his chest. He won't take kindly to you killing his pawn, Naruto-kun, the Hokage admonished, earning a hardened glare from the blonde. I've ignored his attempts to take Menma, as ordered by you, but if he's becoming this daring I'll no longer hold back. Hokage-jiji, he growled, and the old man smirked, lighting his pipe. Patience, Naruto-kun, what Itachi and Shursui have brought me proves we're making him antsy, which means he'll slip up soon. He won't say anything about his destroyed pawn this time, he expected as much most likely, but we won't be able to back him in the corner like Jiraiya and I have planned. The old man finally hardened his eyes as he looked at the blonde. Now, patience, and I promise you this will be handled. So, what's he got planned? The blonde asked, staring to his closest friends. 2 weeks later, just a few days shy of the scheduled council meeting, found Naruto standing at the gates of Konohagakure, his hands in his pockets and his brother at his side. Shouldn't you be in class? The blonde mused, the crimson-haired boy snickering. Iruka-sensei was just droning on about history. Naruto and I already know all that thanks to you and Bachan, he grinned childishly, using one of Jiraiya's ridiculous faces. Besides, I want to meet Nichan's girlfriend, he said in a sing-song voice, earning him an immediate punch to the top of his head. Insolent Gaki, the blonde growled, making sure his crumbled brother was still breathing. He might have accidentally channeled a bit too much chakra into that punch. "Me Nana-chan," the blonde cried, waterfall tears escaping his bulging eyes. "Go back to class or I'll give you another," the blonde growled, before the crimson-haired boy jumped to life and sped off. If there was one thing the boisterous brat feared, it was his brother's legendary anger. "Pain in the ass? I think he's rather cute, Naruto-kun," a voice answered, making him smile. "Mizukage-dano, it's good to see you well," he smiled brightly, nodding to Zabuza and Chojuro, the younger of the two now sporting a legendary blade himself. Mei smiled at the blonde, not being shy about embracing him. It left a few Konoha citizens who knew Naruto shell-shocked. It wasn't often the blonde gave girls the time of day. "I'm happy to see you too. Next time don't send your Ototo away. I'd very much like to meet him," she admonished, earning a sheepish grin from the teen only 2 years her junior. "Gomen, Mei-chan," he rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. "Follow me and I'll introduce you to the Hokage," he asked, earning a nod from her as she skipped to his side and hooked his arm. If Ao was here she would have already told him to shut his mouth, or she'd kill him. Zabuza was sure of it. The exact reason the bandaged swordsman decided to keep his and Chojuro's mouth clamped tight. The last thing he wanted was to get punched halfway back to Kiri. It turned out to be quite the surprise to many villagers around them as they walked to see such a beautiful kunoichi clamped to Naruto's arm. Not that any of them knew she was the newly instated Mizukage. They weren't aware of most delegations from other villages until weeks had passed. But the Hokage was aware of exactly who the leak of military intel and happenings to the general populace was, now just left catching them. "Konoha is quite the beautiful village, Naruto-kun," Mei smiled, eyeing a few of the restaurants that lined the market district, a flower shop, scroll shop, and several weapons shops filling the gaps. Most if not every place had vendors out front as well, selling their fresh goods for families and the like to purchase. "Might be a nice retirement plan for me, should our agreement be fruitful." Naruto smiled, a wolfish smirk she had missed in their short time apart. "I'm sure things will go well, Mei-chan," she had to admit to loving him saying her name so fondly. It wasn't something she had imagined possible when she first met him, and flirted with him just to tease him. But there was just something that drew her to the young man. "Well, here we are," he smiled, gesturing to the large building with a smile on his face. "Hokage-sama should be waiting and ready to meet with you," he added, walking up the stairs and in the building with the three in tow. They bypassed the usual system of being permitted further into the building, climbing several flights of stairs before standing in front of a simple wooden door. Though Mei did notice quite a few nasty glares on their way, she figured due to her close proximity to the blonde. She happily and without a second thought, squeezed his arm closer to her, and added an extra sway to her hips. Just to infuriate them more, or so she hoped. However, that changed as they got in front of the office and she released the blonde, Naruto absolutely understanding why. It wasn't every day you met the third man to be proclaimed Shinobi no Kami, and she wanted to give him her best impression. "Enter," they heard after knocking on the door, coming to see the man look at the blonde with a confused look. "Naruto-kun, I'm surprised you didn't bring them through the VIP entrance," he joked, jabbing a thumb at his window. Naruto chuckled sheepishly. "The Umbu are used to me doing that, not my friends here," he said, earning a mirthful smile from his grandfather figure. "Indeed," Hiruzen chuckled, standing from his chair and offering a hand to Mei. "Terumi Mei, it is an honor to meet the Godame Mizukage. Naruto and the others spoke highly of your prowess," he complimented, earning a smile from the woman as she accepted his hand. "It's an honor to meet a shinobi with such a prestigious past as yours, Hokage-dano," he smiled in return, gesturing towards the chair set up for her. "The rest of you may use the couches provided there, and help yourself to any refreshments you so desire." Hiruzen gestured, earning nods from each of the three young men, well young to him at least. "Now then, Mizukage-dano, I have procured housing. If it's fine with you, Hokage-dano, I would much rather stay with Naruto-kun during my stay here." Hiruzen's eyes widened slightly at the request but nodded, seeing a blushing blonde on one of the couches. Good, at least the brat was still focused on what was happening in the meeting, while he drank sake at 10 in the morning. Tsunade may not have been the best influence for the boy when it came to vices. "That's fine, he lives in the Senju compound with Senju Tsunade and his brother, so there will be plenty of room for you three." The aged Hokage nodded, then flipped open a file. "Now that that is handled, shall we get into the finer details of our future agreement? I'll have to present it to the council in the coming days, which is why I asked you to stay so long." "That's fine, Hokage-dano. I do not mind this reprieve from paperwork and my own counsel." Hiruzen gave her a look that said, "Tell me about it," before the two dived into their work. Naruto sighed as the small group walked into the Senju clan compound, the Kirin marveling at the simple yet elegant buildings. "I'll bring all of you to the main house and have you meet Tsunadeba and Oturo before showing you to the guest houses," the blonde said, noting that the sun had already begun to set, allowing a small yawn to escape his lips. The group walked behind him quietly, choosing to look at the large gardens and plant life almost encompassing every building, then to the large koi pond within the center of the biggest garden. Mei was trying to think of any time she'd seen such a beautiful layout, but it gave her some very good ideas for the updates coming to the mostly destroyed Kiri. "I'm home," Naruto called in as he opened the door, setting the example to remove their shoes. It wasn't long before the patter of quick footfalls could be heard, before a crimson blur slammed into the blonde, taking him to his back. "Nichan, where have you been?" Menma asked, making the blonde chuckle before he explained he was on orders from their Gigi, earning an accepting nod from the boy. He then looked at the people with his brother, pausing at Mei, then looking to his brother with a grin. Is that your girlfriend, Nichan? He asked teasingly, earning a blush from both shinobi and laugh from the imposing Zabuza. I think I like this kid, the swordsman laughed out, setting his large zanbatu just outside of the entranceway. Welcome, I was wondering when you all would be done with your meeting, the blonde-haired Tsunade said, walking into the area in her customary attire. Mei could feel the legendary medic's scrutinizing gaze on her, and nearly gulped under the woman's eyes. Tsunade-sama, it's an honor to meet a kunoichi of your prowess. You've given younger kunoichi like myself so much to aspire to. Mei bowed, Tsunade's scrutinizing glance faltering for a look of mild satisfaction. Not bad, Naruchan, I like this one, she smiled, earning a blush from Mei, who received an apologetic sheepish look from the blonde. You boys will be staying in the guest house just across the breezeway of the east wing. Mei-san, I've prepared a room for you next to Naruchan's room. Zabuza and Chojuro nodded in thanks, while Mei gulped at the knowing tone of the woman. Please rest up, your schedules will be quite full the coming week I presume. Naruchan, don't forget Jiraiya and I will have the preliminary meeting with the Shinobi Council tomorrow morning, she reminded, earning a nod from the boy before he hefted his otodo over his shoulders and went on his way to show everyone to their designated rooms. I cursed the idea, but I know how the Shinobi Council will be when we request to reinstate the Uzumaki clan and change it slightly. And I have a feeling that girl will be a lovely first wife for that Gaki, Tsunade thought to herself, noting that the Mizukage was not only walking closely to the blonde, but was already doting over little Menma. The old pervert would be proud of you, Naruto, she thought with a smirk, returning to her office to prepare all the needed files for tomorrow. Many secrets would be coming to light tomorrow morning, and in a few days' time she'd be able to savor the look of shock on those bastard elders' old wrinkled faces. You expect us to believe that this boy is not only the descendant of the Shodain Naidame, but the heir of the entirety of the Uzumaki clan and all its assets. Shimura Danzo slammed his hands on the table. This was not what he was expecting in the least. But judging not only from the stern look of his ex-teammate, but the documents before each of them, there was no denying it. Jiraiya was the hidden son of the Naidame, who fathered Minato with the help of his unknowing cousin Senju Tsunade, which led way for Naruto's lineage. I demand this boy be placed under the Clan Restoration Act. There is no other choice. The Mizukage, thanks to her council's request, will be the first of his wives. How foolish of you to believe you have any jurisdiction to make such a demand of this council. Hyuga Hayashi scoffed at the man, beyond done with his attitude and shady actions. Please, Hyuga-dano, what more do you expect from the bumbling of the elders? Uchiha Fugaku voiced, distaste clear in his voice, and it was rare that either of these clans agreed on anything. Each of the three retired shinobi glared at the man, who only returned it with fever. Now, for the sake of instating him to the council, I am loathing to agree that the CRA is a needed course for 4 people a clan does not make, Nara Shikaka sighed, glaring at the aged hawk. However, that is something we of the shinobi council must agree on, not our Hokage's advisors, he added, smirking when Danzo deflated slightly. I agree, Akimichi Choza said, Yamanaka and Noichi nodding his own agreement. Soon most were adding their own agreements, the Aburame and Inuzuka being the only against. Either clan liked the idea. For the sake of our alliance, Mizukage Dano, does this change anything with the agreement your council has requested of you and Naruto-kun? Hiruzen asked, as much as he too hated the idea of forcing his grandson figure into multiple marriages. I will accept this change, so long as Naruto-kun doesn't object. Mei nodded, not like she could change it much, and knowing her newly formed council she was sure they would press the matter. It wasn't like they were forcing them to get married immediately, at least, requesting that Mei be allowed to fulfill her duty as Mizukage until a successor be chosen within a 5-year time frame. Naruto sighed, nodding his agreement, however reluctantly he was about this clause, even though he knew most men would kill to be in his shoes. Mei and an undetermined amount of other possibly beautiful wives. He could already imagine the line of drool coming from the corner of Jiraiya's mouth, or the amount of research his newly announced grandfather would attempt to use him for. Hiruzen nodded. Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto will now take up his position as the first clan head of the newly reformed Uzumaki clan, the Hokage dictated, earning a bow from the blonde, already knowing that his informal hyphening of his parents' surnames would not reflect upon the overall name of his clan. He and Menma would be the only two to bear the Namikaze name. He couldn't fathom changing his surname to Senju because of his father's true lineage. It still didn't seem plausible to him. Now then, that leaves us the last topic of our meeting. There is no other topic on our schedule, Hiruzen, Danzo said, narrowing his non-bandaged eye at the man he called his rival. What are you getting at? Ah, Danzo, you're correct in a way, the Hokage nodded, waving his hand before several Umbu appeared surrounding each of the 3 elders. Then, just as quickly 5 Umbu with unmarked masks dropped to the ground dead, the sound of a tirade of birds chirping filling the room. Naruto and Kakashi standing on either side of the group of dead with a Chidori blaring in either of their hands. What is the meaning of this? Yudetane Koharu raged, her eyes glaring at the stone-faced Hokage. Why have you done this, Hiruzen? Mitokado Hamura glared. However, they were the only 2 of the 3 to say anything, Danzo just choosing to glare heatedly at all present. Now, Hiruzen glared at Danzo, releasing enough killing intent to break normal men and women. Why don't you explain a few things to me, starting with wine is still in operation, he ordered, enjoying the glare Danzo fed him. Or rather, was, Jiraiya smirked, bursting into a cloud of smoke, making the war hawk's eyes harden even more. Oh, that's right, Danzo-sama, Naruto sneered the honorific, surprising the man with the amount of killing intent that radiated off one so young. Your base, and all those in your organization have been killed or captured, all of your documents seized, and will be utterly demolished within the next 5 minutes, he explained, dismissing the Chidori from his hand. Now, since you can't answer apparently, why don't you instead tell me what you've done to Shursui? The blonde's killing intent created cracks in the very floor around him, Izumi's Mangekyo spinning wildly into life. It would seem, you already know just what has become of your filthy Uchiha friend, Danzo glared, and Zabuza was actually the one to jump from Mei's side and stop her. The swordsman had no idea what had happened or what was going on, but he knew this was between Naruto and Danzo. So, you admit to killing him and stealing his eye, or maybe you'd like to admit to your attempts of having him stage the massacre of the Uchiha clan. The blonde glared harder than before, the Umbu moving back slightly as roots exploded from the ground, and snaring the elder. Or maybe you'd like to go back further, and speak of your attempts to abduct my Ototo. The roots tightened their grip. Or how about the hundreds of other missing child reports that could be placed at your feet, from each of the clans of our village? The council heard a pop as the roots began to crush the cartilage around the man's ribs, not yet squeezing tight enough to break bone. Fine, answer for your crimes this way, Tsukuyumi. Danzo widened his eyes as the world changed for him in the blink of an eye. There was no counter he could pull for this. It was one of the most powerful techniques of the Mangekyo. When Naruto dropped the Genjutsu, which lasted 72 hours for the man and only lasted a few seconds in actuality, the blonde didn't even care to turn and see the surprised look of Fugaku, that he had mastered the technique. He was too concerned with the panting man before him. That torture would have broken any normal man. So it's true then, Naruto said before snatching the bandage from Danzo's face and closing his regular blue eye. That isn't Shursui's Mangekyo, Hokage-sama. It belonged to our old teammate, Uchiha Kagami, who suspiciously went missing on a mission with this traitor, Hiruzen growled, the other two elders surprised by this turn of events. But a scream broke through their throats as Naruto ripped the eye clean from the man's socket, without even so much as a flinch. Another crime to lay at your feet. How far into this darkness did you fall, Shimura Danzo? The blonde glared, allowing his hate for this man to show as he looked over the eye. The retired shinobi for his part could only glare at the boy. He knew the brat could deactivate his suicide seal if he tried it. The boy outmatched even his years of training in Fuinjutsu. His eni were dead, and now Kagami's Sharingan had been taken as well, his last ace. Well then, everyone but Itachi, Kakashi and the Kiri party were surprised at how quickly Naruto's katana was unsheathed. There's no further point in allowing your miserable existence, Naruto said with dead eyes before cleanly slashing the man's head from his shoulders. Just as he had killed the man, the Umbu killed his supporters in all but the killing of their old teammate. Mission complete, Hokage-sama, he said, after sealing away the 3 bodies. Thank you for your work, Captain Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto. Your retirement from the Umbu is finalized. Hiruzen nodded, still rather hurt that he had to order this done. Your mission to protect the Mizukage, or rather your fiancé, is now your only active mission. Otherwise, you'll be on leave for the next few weeks, he said, earning an accepting nod from the young man. Hokage-sama, what of my nephew's eyes? Fugaku asked, still perturbed that he wasn't the one to kill Shimura. I have hidden one away, the other will be given to Naruto, Sama, Itachi explained, his eyes daring his father to question him. The Uchiha head sighed. I suppose you have done quite a lot to earn the respect and loyalty of the younger Uchiha, he begrudgingly admitted, not understanding why his son refused to follow his teaching of clan before village. It was fine, his own plans hadn't been halted by the changes here today, nor by his son. The man took that moment to leave, others filing out before it was just Naruto, Tsunade, Kakashi, Itachi, Hiruzen and the Kiri group. The blonde let a sigh escape his lips before looking at Mei and then to her 2 bodyguards. You two take the day off, he pointed at them, then pointed at Mei. How does lunch and maybe dinner later sound? The auburn-haired woman blinked her jade-green eyes owlishly, before beaming and taking his hand in hers in the blink of an eye. That sounds lovely, Naruto-kun, she beamed. The earlier happenings lay forgotten as the duo vanished. Ototo is such a real man, Kakashi cried anime tears, beyond proud of his brother in all but blood. Tsunade rolled her eyes. Why did that pervert of hers have to corrupt so many? Quit your babbling, let's go have a spar, Zabuza said to the silver-haired pervert, getting a confused look from the man before a shrug. Chojuro went with them, hoping to be able to learn something new from his mentor. Tsunade, Itachi-kun, will you two accompany me to see what all has been recovered? The Kage asked, both nodding before following the man to his office. Terumi Mei smiled as she rested her mane of long auburn spikes on the shoulder of Naruto, reminiscing her time not only with the boy in his village, but her time with him since she had met him in her country. They sat silently atop the stone-carved face of the Yondaime Hokage, staring into the star-filled sky above them, much like they had stared into the starry night many times within Kirigakure. I'm sorry, he suddenly whispered, closing his eyes with a sigh. She let a small sad smile come to her pale face. There's no reason to be, Naruto-kun, she whispered, nuzzling closer to his warmth. You're the Godame Mizukage. with the ability to love any man lucky enough to have you. Yet your village is shipping you off to marry a man that will have to marry multiple women, he sighed, which turned into a yelp when she pinched the back of his bicep. I chose you. Her voice was firm, so firm that it demanded Naruto meet those fiery green eyes of hers. Even if my council had not recommended this path to ensure the alliance between our homes, I would have chosen you. There is nothing to apologize for, least of all this. She left no room for argument, making the blonde sigh. You're a very hard-headed woman, you know that? He asked, earning a proud smirk from the Mizukage. The perfect woman for a hot-headed hero, wouldn't you say? She countered, making him chuckle with his own smirk. And don't you dare ask if I'm sure, my mind is made up. He laughed as she buried her head back into his shoulder, both having the rare opportunity to act like the teenagers they still were. I guess it helps that Menma has already taken a shining to you, and you him, he smiled, fondly thinking of the times he'd shared with the two in the past several days following the council meeting and the death of Shimura Danzo and the other two elders. I'd kill for that boy just the same as I'd kill to protect you, Naruto-kun, she promised, making him smile again. I know, thank you, she blushed, feeling his lips press against her soft hair. Silence flooded between them for a few moments, the two just enjoying the scenery, until May finally broke the silence with an apology of her own. I'm sorry that I'll have to be leaving you soon. The work of Mizukage calls, she chuckled bitterly, and he shrugged lazily. I'm sure there will be reason for you to return before long, and like I said, if the need ever arises you have my seal to call me to you. Just remember that distance is going to leave me pretty depleted, he chuckled, and she smiled. I won't use it unless I need to. I don't want to pull you away from Menma-kun, he's missed you a lot. He could pick up the regret in her tone, most likely blaming herself for the time apart for the brothers. Menma is a tough spirit, he'll give me hell for being away so long, but he knows it was for the best and that it was my duty to complete my mission, no matter how long it took, he reassured her, before looking down to the silent village below them. I lost a lot being there, but it was to stop the suffering of people, and like me, Menma wants that to stop at all costs. I'll always be thankful to you and your team for those losses, she said, allowing a small bit of sadness into her eyes as she too looked over the quiet village, her mind wandering to the departed Izumi for a moment, remembering all she had done and her final sacrifice. The blonde finally sighed after a long moment of silence. You've got a long trip ahead of you tomorrow, Mizukage-sama, we should head home. The formal way he addressed her made the girl glare, knowing full well he did it to purposefully mess with her. Why don't we go get a drink instead, Uzumaki Namake-sama, she countered, her slim finger pointing to a location of the village with some life still in it. I assume there's a bar of some sort down there. Naruto sighed. There is. Are you sure you don't want to rest instead? I'm sure, she said, standing effortlessly before dragging him up alongside her. The blonde let out another lazy sigh, before making both of them vanish with his jutsu. And you're sure of this? Hiruzen asked, looking worriedly to the young man and older woman before him. The somber Uchiha Mikoto nodded slowly. All of the reports are true. I've seen why he has been acting so strangely with my own eyes now, she frowned, hating what she had been forced to see by her son. He's fallen, and taken half of the clan into his dark machinations. I'll handle this myself. Itachi frowned, making the Hokage shake his head. No, Fugaku alone could handle you, Itachi-kun, the man admitted, looking up to the eyes of his subordinate. Your father is in possession of the next level of the Mangekyo Sharingan, unperturbed by the drawbacks my old friend Kagami once told me of. You will need assistance, and I don't just mean you, Mikoto. You want to involve Naruto-kun, don't you? The woman asked, or rather stated, her frown deepening only for the man to nod. You trained him to fight Sharingan, and to use the Dijutsu. I believe you will need him, he recalled, earning a nod from the woman, however reluctant. The last thing she wanted to do was involve her student into even more bloodshed, knowing full well he'd been through more of it than many his age. My husband will be my own problem. I will not force my son or student to clean up my mess, she firmly spoke, earning a nod of acceptance from the man. We must wait for the Mizukage to leave. I don't want her or her forces caught in the fighting. We'll move tomorrow. We can't take the risk of the Mizukage getting involved. Uchiha Fugaku spoke into the darkness, his eyes trained on a singular glowing crimson orb. Should we fail, I'll do as we agreed upon. Good, a deep voice replied, his smirk hidden by not only the darkness, but a strange mask. With that blonde gaki in the village, I expect you to, but he shall be handled eventually. Uzumaki Namake's Naruto won't be of any threat to me. You're a fool if you truly believe that. Keep your wits about you and don't make any mistakes, the man warned, cutting off his words. I have places to be, and things to do. With that the man was gone, like he'd never been there, leaving Fugaku glaring at the place he had been. Naruto grunted as Mei slammed him against the door they had just stumbled through, her lips assaulting his own, his hands pulling her tightly to him by the small of her back, one trailing down to firmly grasp her bottom, eliciting a moan from her. The two were so engrossed with themselves that neither heard the patter of two sets of feet coming to investigate, neither caring less as Naruto's other hand found her firm ass, lifting her up for the woman to wrap her long legs around his midsection. Her arms were already around his neck, her fingers working through his spiky blonde hair. As the footsteps grew closer, the oblivious Menma was prepared to shout his greeting at the two before a hand clasped over his mouth, another finding his violet eyes. Tsunade was the one to prevent her youngest grandson from seeing the fruition of teenage hormones at work, as she quickly retreated to where they had come, slightly wishing she had another pair of hands to cover Menma's ears so as to not hear as the Mizuki moaned his brother's name. Naruto. Her breathing hitched as the blonde broke the kiss, assaulting her neck with his lips and teeth. The blonde had already turned the tables on her, now having her back to the door as he bit the nape of her neck before trailing the tip of his tongue up and to her chin before nipping there. Mei let out another moan before slamming her lips to his, grabbing his hair tightly as she fought his tongue for dominance. You better take me to your room right now, Naruto-kun, she ordered with a purr, as she broke for air. Yes ma'am, he gave her that damnable smirk before using the Hiraishin to speed up the process. Neither would sleep much that night. Fortunately the house was big enough for Tsunade and Menma to save themselves any exposure to the two teenagers' love-making. The next day found Naruto overlooking Menma's weekend training, the brothers having long since seen the Mizuki and her team off. The two were in a heavily forested portion of the former Senju clan compound, Menma flipping around the branches and trees in an attempt to fight his brother. The blonde however was anchored to his chosen spot, his brother not even able to make him take a step in any direction. Frankly, it was pissing Menma off, and while he understood his brother was holding back, he couldn't fathom how long it would take him to actually make his brother take a fight with him seriously. Damn it, the crimson-haired boy growled as his brother caught his kick with a smirk. Your speed is getting better, but you're still slow, Oturo, he said before finally taking a step only to throw the boy hurtling into one of the trees. You about ready to call it a day? Hell no, I won't give up Nai-chan, ever. The boy's conviction made Naruto smile wolfishly. Good, then come Oturo, he challenged, the boy dashing forward with a roar of defiance. However, his mad charge was halted as a new person landed in between them, holding a hand up to stop Menma. Violet eyes glared at the silver-haired cyclops before him, annoyed by the eye smile already on the man's face. Kaka and Ibaka, why did you stop me? The boy grumbled, only for that infamous eye smile to seemingly brighten. Sorry Menma-kun, Hokage-sama has asked me to bring Naruto-kun to him. The silver-haired, now jounin since he too was removed from the Umbu, apologized to the youngest of his surrogate brothers. What does the monkey want now? Naruto grumbled, earning a snicker from his younger brother at the nickname. I don't know, I was just asked to get you Naruto-kun. I can take over Menma-kun's training for today. I smiled now at the eldest Uzumaki, earning a foxy smile from the youngest. I'm going to kick your ass, Kaka and Ibaka. Is that so? Kakashi chuckled with a raised brow, Naruto shaking his head with a smirk. Finish up his taijutsu and then help him out with ninjutsu, Kaka and I, the blonde directed, vanishing in a right and shunshin. Now then, you were saying something about kicking my ass? Kakashi asked, Menma growling as he noticed Kakashi's eyes trained on that stupid orange pervert book. With a roar the crimson-haired boy was out to prove himself. Many hours later, the blonde found himself only able to ask one simple question, however complex it truly was. Are you sure about this? Naruto asked, his voice sounding remorseful as those daunting mixed-matched eyes stared at his sensei's black. The woman looked down for a moment, the blonde feeling the turmoil radiating off her, before looking to her son. Itachi for his part, had hardened himself. He knew what had to be done as much as a part of him hated it. It's what we need to do for the village, and for any hope that some of my clan will be allowed to continue their lives, Mikoto said, her eyes beginning to match her son's hardened gaze. It wasn't often when a spouse was forced to kill their husband because of his actions, but when she weighed the needs of the village to the ambitions of her husband, there was no contest, and never would be in her heart. It was the exact principle she had taught her eldest after being exposed to the darkness of the Uchiha, the village before the clan. For the clan was but a branch of the mighty tree of Konohagakure, and when a branch rots it falls. Unfortunately, her husband, like her father and grandfather before him, had allowed that darkness to absorb them and take them from the path the clan chose when they shunned the beliefs of Uchiha Madara, her great-grandfather. It won't be much longer before they meet at the shrine. It is there that we will strike. Itachi looked to his mother, his resolve only softening for a moment, as even he could still feel the turmoil in the woman's heart. You don't need to do this if you cannot, Ka-chan. He was going to recommend that she watch over Sasuke, and allow her son and student to finish this. But the Sharingan, or rather Mangekyo he'd only ever suspected his mother to possess, glared heatedly at him, stopping any such suggestion. Don't fight her on this, Itachi. Mikoto-sensei has made her decision, Naruto spoke, his tone and face free of all emotion. Itachi nodded, feeling a bead of sweat roll down his face as his friend put on display the cold look of his that helped earn his moniker, Senso no Okami. The eldest son of the Uchiha clan only nodded, before the three vanished from the rooftops of the clan compound. Nearly an hour later, all three were hidden within the shadows of the hidden meeting hall beneath the Naka shrine. Naruto's cold eyes trained on the stone just behind Fugaku as the traitor to be overlooked his gathered men. The tablet unnerved him greatly, and what he could read with just the first stage of his Sharingan activated, did not do anything to calm him. From his left he felt the hand of Mikoto on his back move to his shoulder, all of them using a camouflage technique taught by the Umbu. All three knew it would only take one of the conspirators to activate their Sharingan for them to be discovered and all hell to break loose. But it seemed Mikoto wasn't worried about that as she caught Naruto's line of vision. The boy had a greater level of their clan's Dijitsu than herself, but he was just now finding the dark way that usually developed those eyes. The way of her husband, her father and her grandfather. Maybe it was time that relic of the past found its way out of their clan's teachings. Considering she could make out every Uchiha council member at the front of the gathered men and women, she found herself morbidly admitting that there would be no one to oppose it. Tonight, in what was valued one of their most holy grounds, the era of the old Uchiha way would end, allowing herself and the generation she raised to usher in what she prayed would be better for not only their clan, but Konoha as well. Just as she caught the blonde's eyes, she mouthed the words, "Destroy it," and before she could blink the boy was gone in an ungodly burst of speed. Naruto reappeared, a swirling blue ball expanding into life in his palm as he stared at the stone with his eternal Mangekyo now active. That activation, and the brief moments it took for his attack to form, allowed the engraving of the stone to be imprinted on his mind. It only concreted his desire to reduce it to rubble. The Uchiha now behind him all gaped, before seeing the blonde hair, the familiar orb of chakra in his hand aimed directly at their relic. An elder managed to throw himself between the blonde and the tablet in a remarkable burst of speed, but none were prepared for what happened next. That easily recognizable orb of pure blue chakra erupted with a volley of lightning, the sound of a storm of raging static filling every ear. Right on, Razandori. That one shout led to the blonde plunging his hand through the elder, only for the ball to explode in raw right on chakra on the other side. The attack did as the blonde had designed it to, completely eviscerating the relic into nothing but crumbles of the stone it once was. The blonde grunted for a moment, having only just recently created and mastered that variant of his father's prized jutsu, but he still could feel the harsh glare, or rather glares, directed at him. "Namikaze, you will pay with your life for this," Fugaku growled, his eternal Mangekyo activating as he glared at the back of his target. With practice ease a kunai flew from his sleeve into his waiting palm as he charged the boy, but before his wild swing could land, a katana blocked his way. The gleaming blade was all too familiar to the man, as were the Mangekyo glaring heatedly at him. "So, my wife has chosen a side, it would seem." His voice came out with acceptance, as if he couldn't even fathom her choosing his side. "I guess you really are still the girl who opposed your father's ways and his choice to marry you to me, so that someone like him could lead us. This is the way I have chosen, just as my father and you chose your ways." She glared at him, and any past hesitance was seemingly gone. Neither flinched as a scream erupted from the back of the gathered Uchiha. The father not even looking, already knowing exactly who it was that had silenced one of his men. Itachi said nothing, returning the glare sent his way with equal hate. If there was one thing he actually and wholeheartedly hated, it was this side of his clan. "Kill him," an elder roared, just before a bullet of lightning rushed out of his forehead. Those next to the man looked back to see Naruto staring at them with his blue eye closed, and right hand held out like a finger gun. Bang! The blonde muttered his eternal Mangekyo, the combined pattern of Shursui and Izumi's eyes, spinning ominously, before two more bullets of electricity left the tip of his finger, ending two more in the same way. Itachi himself had used the distraction to cleave his sword through several more of his clansmen, deflecting a barrage of shuriken so perfectly that he sent them flying back and killed several more Uchiha. Naruto appeared just behind those shocked at the skill of Itachi, cleaving his own sword laced with right-on chakra through three necks at the same time. "They've already killed quite a lot, Mikoto. Why did they even need to send you?" Fugaku smirked, watching as his wife's eyes widened when they picked up the chakra flowing from his system. "Katon, Gakyaku no Jutsu." Her husband hadn't used a single hand seal, something she had never seen with their rite of passage jutsu, at least not from him. Thankfully, with how close they were, the stream from his mouth hadn't yet reached its full potential, giving her the chance to dodge. But she had taken her eyes off the man, and when she looked back he was gone. Her eyes quickly looked around, not finding him anywhere within the shrine. Quickly, she jumped to where Naruto was, taking down the several men and women he was fighting with a surprise attack of her own. "Naruto, Fugaku has left. I need you to sense his chakra and see where he has gone, now." The blonde nodded easily, crouching down and placing 2 fingers to the ground before everyone still alive in the room felt a massive pulse of his chakra. When his eyes opened, Naruto glared in the direction he'd sensed the man. "He's outside of the village, heading away with no other signatures close to him. Nearest to him is a division of Umbu. They must have sensed him and begun chase," Mikoto growled. All in the matter of moments her husband had escaped. The man most likely had never planned to actually win his endeavor, not if he planned to fail like this. "There's nothing we can do now," Mikoto growled, throwing her katana in a dart-like manner through another of the conspirators, the last of the elders who attempted to escape his fate. But her eyes widened as she felt a familiar change in Naruto's chakra, before his own eyes widened slightly. She made to reach for him, but before her hand could find his arm, he was gone. "Damn it, Naruto, I told you he wasn't your fight," she growled, her own sensing abilities flaring to life. Hers were nowhere near the prowess her student could manage, but she could just pick up the faint trail her husband had left in his use of several shunshin to escape. Hopefully it would lead her to them both. "Itachi, finish here," she ordered her eldest, only receiving a silent nod as the boy used what the Umbu had taught him to decimate the remaining would-be traitors. He had every intention of going right after his mother and brother in all but blood, just as soon as he finished here. Naruto reappeared where one of the kunai bearing his Horatian seal had been thrown, immediately pulsing his chakra before disappearing once more in that raw speed many knew him for. The Umbu had done exactly as the Hokage had instructed them, Attempt to stop Fugaku should he escape. If you cannot, use the kunai to bring backup. Naruto was that backup, and thanks to his sensory ability he'd already zeroed in on the fleeing Uchiha patriarch. Knowing in the back of his mind his sensei was beyond livid with him. Forgive me, sensei, but these countermeasures were necessary, he whispered, before his senses screamed at him. Within a moment, his foot hit the next branch before releasing a burst of chakra that allowed him to flip away from the mass of flames sent his way. But the attacker didn't expect the three-pronged kunai that ripped through his flames, nor the blonde appearing above him with a Rasengan aimed directly at his head. He was quick to sidestep the counter, but didn't even see the kick coming that sent him flying into the tree behind him. You should have kept running, Fugakudano. The Uchiha could hear the animalistic growl escape the blonde's throat. Only a fool faces the wolf when they are its prey. Fugaku glared at the boy before his Sharingan flared into its final stage. He refused to allow this ingrate with nowhere near the battle experience he possessed to speak to him this way. I'll make you regret those words, Namikaze. I only wish I could be having this fight with that bastard father of yours, he growled, taking the stance of the most feared weapon of the Uchiha arsenal, the Gaigeki Kiken, Interceptor Fist. So, that's what your hate stems from. Nothing more than jealousy, Naruto taunted before Fugaku nearly blanched as a foreign chakra begun circulating through his chakra. It was gone as quickly as it came, the blonde easily snapping it down with trained ease. Forgive me, but we can't do that so close to the village, the blonde said, and Fugaku knew it wasn't directed towards him. Who are you speaking to, Gaki? The Uchiha gave him a glance of trepidation. Someone who hates your clan more than most. It's the only mercy I will give you, not releasing that power upon you, Naruto glared, his still active Mangekyo spinning dangerously. However, for all you have put my precious sensei through, I won't let you walk away unscathed tonight, team. Fugaku had no time to continue his line of thought about what the blonde could mean, as within less than a moment, the blonde was already before him. He narrowly dodged the punch that devastated the tree behind him, but he was forced to jump away as new branches launched from the tree in an attempt to ensnare him and stop any movement. A cruel smirk came to his face. Catch me if you can, Namikaze, he taunted, before using his own impressive speed to escape once more. Naruto knew the lay of the land, and at the speed they had already traveled in Fugaku's trajectory, there was only one place he could be headed. Damn Uchiha and their dramatics, the blonde growled before mimicking the Uchiha's words in a mocking way. Nonetheless, it was not even a moment later he shot off after the man, all joking and mockery gone. It was only a matter of moments before the blonde exploded from the forest, skidding to a stop and glaring at the figure of Fugaku across the ravine from him. I never understood the dramatics your clan are so prone to, but if you wish to have our battle on these sacred grounds, Fugaku smirked as he felt Naruto's chakra flare, to the point it was nearly visible around him. I'll be more than happy to oblige. Good, Namikaze, show me all that you have and in return I'll show you the true power of these eyes of mine. Now it was Naruto's turn to be surprised as a familiar flare of chakra exuded from Fugaku, just as visible around the man. As I'm sure the tablet explained to you, the Mangekyo is gained through great loss, whether the life be taken by your own hands or the hands of another. The final and true form of the Mangekyo is gained when another set of Mangekyo replace the original. In most cases from a sibling or someone of very similar circumstances, whether it's gifted, he gestured his hand towards the blonde, or stolen. The Uchiha then gestured to his own eyes, a dark sneer across his face. Naruto's response was a cold, murderous glare. This man was everything he hated in the shinobi world, everything he wanted to wipe from it. With every word the man spoke, the regret the blonde felt for taking this from his sensei faded more and more. I've already destroyed one darkness of Konoha, his fist clenched tightly, before his katana appeared in an explosion of lightning. You will be the next. His declaration was cemented by the pointing of his mother's katana directly at the man. Until there is no remaining darkness of man in this world, I will hunt it and destroy it. Fugaku's cruel smirk only grew as he was forced to bring a kunai up to defend a lightning-quick attack from the blonde. Not even surprised the blonde had made it to him across the ravine. Show me your power, here where your ancestor fought mine. The man laughed, expertly kicking the blonde in the chin and away, once more falling into his stance. Neither one paying any mind to the stone visage of Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama just a short distance from them, the place known as the Valley of the End. Shut up, the blonde roared, exploding back towards the man. They exchanged blows with experience and strength on both sides, the Uchiha surprising Naruto that he could match him. Regardless, the blonde would continue, unknowingly allowing his anger at the man to twist his dream of peace in this moment to one of murder of every one person like this man. His attacks became even more fierce as that anger drove him, fed him and strengthened him. The Uchiha only laughed before surprising the blonde with another attack that sent him sprawling back. Yes, boy, allow that anger to drive you, just as every Uchiha and shinobi should. He laughed, and Naruto's eyes widened for a moment. You hate me, but in this moment you are just like me, willing to do whatever it takes to destroy what you don't agree with. He smirked cruelly, and Naruto wanted to argue. But this man was right. For a moment he had forsaken his way for hate just as this man did. Naruto released a calming breath, before his chakra exploded around him even more vivid than before as the blue chakra ebbed into a dark green before the markings of his Sannin, Moto appeared. His Sharingan and blue eye glared at the man, only inciting another smirk from him. There, that's the power I wanted to see. Fugaku's eyes hardened, before his own Sharingan began spinning dangerously. Now you may see the true power of the Sharingan, when the power of both eyes are activated at once, Susanoo. Immediately, a skeletal being of pure chakra came to life around the man, crimson in color with golden eyes that glared heatedly at the blonde. Naruto only looked back with an eerie calmness that surprised the man. So, this is the power the Shodai spoke of in his journals, what Madara was capable of. The blonde examined it for a moment. Though he described it much differently, I assume you don't have the exact same prowess with it as Madara once possessed. That was it, the blonde was back to himself, and already finding the words to infuriate his opponent. Maybe I was wrong about what I told you before, about the mercy I would give you tonight. The calm with which he said those words sent warning flags sky high within Fugaku's mind. Slightly awestruck, he watched as that exploding green chakra of the boys began to bubble with colors of crimson even darker than his Susanoo. While I have come to terms with my tenant, my holding him must remain a secret, so I'm afraid tonight you will die. With those words that crimson exploded from the boy, his blue eye morphing into a way Fugaku couldn't even describe. The pupil became gold before dilating and bleeding red into the white of his eye, giving the boy a truly fearsome presence combined with the Sannin power he was already exuding. Prepare yourself, he growled, a single tail of chakra growing out from his cloak. Mikoto's eyes widened as she felt the quick explosion of chakra before everything seemed to fade within no less than 5 minutes. What was that? She mumbled, not stopping her progress toward the two. She had only felt chakra like that around her former best friend, and only once near the level it was released at that moment. But it wasn't like that fateful night 11 years ago. It was calmer, subdued even, and most certainly controlled. So, this is what Naruto-kun has been hiding, she whispered, connecting the dots quickly. But those thoughts left her just as quick as they had come when nearly all of the chakra she could feel suddenly stopped as a third presence appeared, and it, and her husband's, disappeared. When she burst from the trees, she was surprised to find Naruto breathing heavily, his modesty barely hidden by his tattered and destroyed clothing. But regardless, he was whole and her husband hadn't managed to wound him gravely. Naruto, she called, quickly coming to his side and beginning to channel healing chakra. Of all the reckless things you've done, this tops them all. Then you don't know half the reckless things I've done, sensei, he chuckled weakly, missing the glare sent his way. I'll have to apologize to Itachi. I was wrong saying Fugaku couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag. Very wrong. Another chuckle, as he grunted, moving himself to a sitting position. I underestimated him before. But not this time. He held nothing back and I had him beat. But someone stopped me. I felt a third chakra signature here. But I've never felt it before, she confirmed, earning a nod from the blonde. But I've felt it before, sensei. Twice. He glared at what she presumed to be the spot the owner of said chakra had been. Once, while I was held prisoner by the Yandere Mizukage, and another 11 years ago, during the Kyuubi attack. Mikoto allowed her eyes to widen greatly. You can't mean. But the glare her former student sent her quieted any rebuttal she could have mustered. I won't ever forget that man's chakra, the one who nearly took everything from me. His glare returned to the spot. Uchiha Fugaku is now working with or for that man. Mikoto allowed the sadness at that discovery to seep into her eyes for but a moment. I'll finish healing you, and then we need to report to Hokage-sama, she said. Naruto could sense her sadness easily, all too easily, having become so close to his sensei. I'm sorry, Mikoto-sensei. Naruto groaned as he looked at the woman across the desk from him, her mirthful green eyes meeting his own mixed-matched glare with ease. The blonde silently wondered when her eyes started to fill with love when meeting his own, but did nothing to lessen the serious look he was giving her. You know you could have sent this by messenger hawk. You have many at your disposal as Mizukage, Mei-chan. Oh, I just couldn't miss the chance to have you here, Naruto-kun. That playfulness in her tone forebode that this was just the beginning of the minx's plans. Besides, it will also allow you to escort me to Konoha for this year's official meeting. I suppose you'll use any free time we have to goad me into as many dates as possible, he sighed, only for her grin to double in size if that was even possible. Don't pretend like you don't love seeing me all dressed up for our excursions out, and I know you love the after even more. The blush lighting his cheeks only encouraged her grin's growth. Besides, isn't it a husband's duty to spoil his lovely wife? We're not married yet, troublesome woman, the blonde deadpanned, making her giggle. Consider it practice for our future then, Naruto-kun. Naruto had to admit he couldn't argue any of her points, but that didn't make her any less troublesome as he had put it. I suppose it's fine, and I'll be back in Konoha in time for Ototo's graduation from the academy. She knew this was his own way of submitting to her planning. Oh, and you'll even have a date for the event, she smiled, enjoying the groan that escaped his lips. How is my dear Mena-chan? She asked, finally getting her giggles under control. Naruto raised a brow at the woman, still surprised by how attached she was to his family, not to forget protective. His mixed-matched eyes looked to the blue sky behind her. With any luck he's in class as he should be, and not on the receiving end of a beating from Bachan for skipping again. He sighed at the mental image, amazed at how his brother managed to survive their fearsome grandmother's rage at every turn. His eyes then found those mirthful green with a smirk spreading across his face. How about we catch up over a bowl or 3 of ramen, my treat? Well, I suppose I can make time in the busy schedule of the Mizukage for our honored guest, my future husband no less. She smiled fondly at him, and in that moment Naruto was reminded why he was so infatuated with this troublesome woman. With the grace of a goddess amongst men, she stood from her chair, sauntered around the desk and to the door with that antagonizing extra sway to her hips. "Are you coming, Narukoi?" Uzumaki Namikaze Menma sat as his brother had ordered of him, in his classroom. An annoyed glare focused on the silver-haired teacher's assistant that hated him for no given reason. The man had not once, not twice, but thrice attempted to insult his intelligence, and each time the crimson-haired boy had turned it back on him, only for the pink-haired girl, Harino Sakura, next to him to berate him for being rude to a teacher who he should supposedly always respect. His brother sure wouldn't respect the wimp, so why on earth would he ever consider it? Especially when he started it every time. "Menma, can you answer the question?" Yumino Irika asked, a kind smile on his face as he looked expectantly to one of his more gifted students. This Chunin was the only person in the academy Menma respected, and the only one who returned it wholeheartedly, and was the actual teacher. The Kagebunshin is a jutsu initially created for scouting and spying, allowing the user to form a solid clone that when dispersed transfer all memory back to the original, which also makes it a great tool for training, he answered, his bored tone not lost to the man. But the chakra it takes to summon a single clone has marked it a forbidden jutsu, only learned by jounin, or in special cases by those with enough chakra. The crimson-haired boy recited with practiced ease. It was an often asked question of him, considering it was the variant of the jutsu he himself used. "Well done," Irika smiled, casting a hidden glare to his assistant for prior remarks before moving on with the lessons. The class went on as it normally did following, Sakura displaying exactly why she was the most likely to grasp the Kunoichi of the Year title with her vast knowledge. Uchiha Sasuke going unnoticed as he full-on slept on the other side of Menma, the other various clan heirs proving to be just as bored as them. It was really only the civilian populace these types of lessons were geared to, most clan children having grown up immersed in it for all their lives. But it was also in an attempt to cement it within each student regardless of background. Not only that, but to assess their skills, what they excelled and lacked in, and to affirm they were ready for the life of genin, while also giving them some time to grow up with normal childhoods, unlike in the warring clan era of the past. "Now then," Irika's voice brought everyone's attention to him with ease, aside from the snoozing Uchiha. "That will be all for today, and I want you all to be sure you're taking your home training seriously with the genin exams coming at the end of next week. See you tomorrow, children," he smiled, before leaving with his assistant in tow. Menma nudged the Uchiha next to him. "Oi team, it's over, wake up." Sasuke only grunted in response, glaring as he noticed the green eyes of their desk mate on him. The girl was beyond obsessed with him, and it truly annoyed him to no end, especially considering he had no desire to even speak to the girl, least of all not for the way she would berate his best friend one moment, and then dote over him the next. It grated on his nerves. "You going home to train, or you want to grab something to eat?" The Uchiha raised a brow at him. "I'm not going to that ramen stand with you again. Besides, Zenai-chan said he'd train me today." Menma glared at him. "What's wrong with Ichiraku? It's the dish of the gods," he declared, annoyed by his blasphemous best friend. "Nothing, you just eat like a slob," Sasuke replied with a smirk before waving his goodbye, leaving the crimson-haired boy to grumble. "I'll join you if you want, Menma." The boy jumped at the new voice, spinning around to find a blonde-haired girl leaning down from the row above. She smiled fondly at him, her teal eyes meeting his violet expectantly. Menma's eyes narrowed at her. "What's your motive, Ino-chan?" Yamanaka Ino laughed at his untrusting stare. "I have no motives other than to have a meal with you, Menma." She paused for a moment, taking up a thoughtful look. This time, she added, making him face fault in her general direction. "What do you say, forehead, you want to come?" she asked, looking to the still scribbling Sakura. "I guess if you're eating it, it can't be too bad," the girl sighed, then glared at Menma, for seemingly no cause. "But don't you try anything funny, mister." The threat was clear, and while Menma knew he could stop any attack from her, he never raised a hand to Sakura. "Hi, Sakura-chan," he nodded, the girl missing it when he rolled his eyes after she looked away. After waiting for the pink-haired girl to pack her things, the unlikely trio were off. Everyone else Ino attempted to involve having other plans. Menma was idly listening as the two girls conversed from either of his sides, beyond used to being stuck in between them. Outside of Sasuke, Inuzuka Kiba, Naro Shikamaru and Akimichi Choji, these two were amongst his best friends and he often hung out with them and just them. Not much longer found the three sitting in the famed, namely thanks to his brother, ramen stand. Menma eating his favorite dish with gusto, while the girls on either of his sides ate at a more subdued pace. All three, yes especially Menma, had frequented the stand to a large degree. In part thanks to this generation's mild obsession with the head of the reborn Uzumaki clan, Naruto. It wasn't rare to find them asking the shinobi for pointers and even just about his career as a shinobi. Honestly, all it did was make Menma strive for the same recognition someday. Though if he had to be honest with himself, he only wanted one person's recognition at the moment, and that was the pink-haired civilian next to him. The girl seemingly oblivious to his short glances in her direction as they ate, and surely oblivious to his attraction to her. But on the same token the crimson-haired boy was painfully unaware of the glances cast his way by the girl to his other side. It had been a dynamic Naruto had amusedly caught on to early on, mainly in part to Mei actually pointing it out to him. However, it did land the pink-haired civilian under the fearsome blonde's scrutiny, half wondering why his brother was infatuated with the girl. the other half of him wondering why his brother subjected himself to the girl's brash temper and fangirl tendencies towards Sasuke, especially with another girl his age clearly interested. But it also reminded the blonde of how dubiously block-headed and unobservant to the fairer sex he once was. Ino sighed from the youngest Uzumaki's left, bringing the boy's attention to her with a curious look. Well, I really should be heading home. Tu-chan is probably wondering where I've been, she explained, earning a small smirk from the Uzumaki. Still as protective as ever of his little princess? Ino smirked back at the teasing way he called her that, but nodded nonetheless. It's the right of a daughter to have her father wrapped. Menma chuckled, before sharing a goodbye with the girl, Sakura promising to see her tomorrow. I suppose that means I should leave too. I need to do some training, the civilian girl admitted, and Menma looked to her with a smile. You could always come train with me, Sakura-chan. The pinkette suppressed her glare at the boy and allowed herself to smile. It wasn't the first time he'd offered and knew all too well it wouldn't be the last. Maybe next time, Baka, came the usual response, her smile becoming slightly sweet before she too got up and left him alone. Well, I guess I should get back too. Ero-senin is probably waiting to train me some, the boy sighed, leaving money on the counter and calling out his goodbye to the shop owner. Tucci called out his own goodbye, grumbling at seeing once again an Uzumaki had overpaid and left the change. Not too much later, and the young teen walked into his home, finding Jiraiya planted at a desk with paperwork all around him. The stray curse and grumble were easy enough to pick up, Naruto's name being one of them, as the man glared at the papers. Apparently Naruto had left him in charge of the clan work while he was on mission to Kiri, and the Sannin was anything but pleased. So, that's your plan, Gaki? He heard the man sigh, looking at a seemingly innocent sheet of paper with some trepidation. Should have put you into the fold with the network long ago. If so, he shook his head, still not noticing the crimson-haired boy. Ero-senin, you still going to train me today? The white-haired man looked up at that, a smile instantly spreading across his face as he looked at his get-out-of-jail-free card. Without a moment's notice, two clones came into existence, taking over the man's work without even a word. Can't lie, kid, I definitely need the break. I don't see how that brother of yours puts up with all of that shit, Jiraiya proclaimed with a glare over his shoulder at the paperwork. It explains why he gets so grumpy all the time, I guess. Menma shrugged, not really knowing any of the intricacy that went into his brother's duties. Nor, in all honesty, did he care. Being the clan head wasn't his path, nor was it what he wanted from the future, his only dream being to take the same hat his father once wore, and be twice the Kage he would have been. It sure does. And he's managing to keep me from my research without even being here, the pervert grumbled, pushing open the back door and leading Menma into the backyard. I turn the spy network I establish over to him, specifically so I can focus on my next book, and then he just tosses it back in my lap with an extra load. Menma knew this line of complaint. It was the same one he got whenever his brother left on mission, and more times than not it led to his grandfather going a little harder than necessary in their training. But the crimson-haired boy took it in stride. Like his brother, he loved the challenge and soaked knowledge up like a sponge when given the opportunity. No, by no means did that mean he was what people like to call a genius. He was a proud and brash moron at heart, and always would be. But hard work was his bread and butter, and it suited him well. Alright, Gaki, nothing too crazy. Naruto doesn't want you learning anything too stupendous until after you graduate in 2 weeks, Jiraiya explained, and Menma was fully aware. Like always, this training session would be for his taijutsu and chakra control, something his brother always grinded into him. But I will allow you to start using ninja tools of your choosing, anything you like. I want you to come straight at me with the intent to kill. The Toad Sage smirked, seeing that devious foxy grin on his youngest grandson's face. Having everything out in the open, secrets long since hidden before even the boy's father was alive, felt so good to Jiraiya. Being able to say Minato was his son, even if he was long since deceased, and call Naruto and Menma his grandsons was all the man had ever truly yearned for. Plus, Tsunade had been much more accepting to his advances, and that was always a win in his mind, most definitely. So lost in his musings, the self-proclaimed super pervert nearly missed his youngest throwing a Fuma shuriken directly at him. But his grandson was caught completely off guard when Jiraiya did the impossible, stopping the blade with his teeth. The man smiled almost insanely at the boy, laughing at him with the blade still in his mouth. You're going to have to do better than that, Gaki, his mumbled voice said. Menma honestly should have expected something so crazy from his grandfather. The man set the precedent for being unpredictable. But with that their training truly began, completely oblivious to the watching eyes of Hazel. Naruto smiled up at the beige ceiling above him, his bedmates breathing ragged at best as her hot breath tickled the growing stubble on his chin. I really do enjoy having you to myself, Naruto-kun, even if one day I'll have to share, the exquisite woman next to him breathed, and he could basically feel her emotion radiating to him. I'm sorry again for that. In all honesty, you're the first woman I've ever yearned for and haven't the first clue about what being with multiple women entails, he admitted with a sigh, the circumstances of his predicament becoming his guilt. Whatever happens, at least I'll always be able to say you were mine first, she smiled, brushing her hand against his chiseled chest. Not a scar was present on him, aside from the one marring his beautiful right eye, and honestly it still amazed her to this day. She herself had several scars across her body, and to be completely fair they made her a bit self-conscious when compared to his nigh-perfect skin. But Naruto being Naruto, had told her they only accentuated her beauty and was visible proof he'd be marrying a kunoichi and not just a simple woman. May, for all she was worth, loved that about him, the equality he gave her and the respect he had for her. Gingerly, she lifted herself to sit atop his muscular form, a shapely leg on either side of him. She would have been a fool not to notice Naruto's obsession with her long legs. And as if to cement that infatuation, his hands greedily found them and massaged them. Before we get into round 2, maybe you can answer some things for me? Naruto knew that tone. And even with the seductive hint of it, and the way she leaned down to press herself fully against his body, he knew she wanted to talk shop. I suppose becoming the spy master in my grandfather's stead does give me the insight you probably desire. She smiled at his response, rewarding him with a loving kiss. What exactly has kept you so busy as of late? Your letters have displayed a sense of exhaustion, she asked, continuing her idle kissing of his cheeks, chin and neck. She knew it was distracting him, but she also was fully aware he loved it, at least judging from what was pressing against her toned stomach. There has been a lot recently actually. Another reason I'm glad your stay in Konoha will be extended this time around, he answered, grunting as he felt her body rub up against his. He loved the way they were, the teasing of theirs not ceasing for a moment, especially not when his hands glided from her thighs to her toned rear. How will your council do without you here? Oh, Ao-sen will keep them in line. He knows my expectations, she whispered in between more kisses. Now why don't you quit trying to distract me and give me some more detail, she asked, before nipping his ear and whispering, I promise to reward you. Naruto chuckled at that. According to a particularly well-embedded spy of mine, the snake has been making quite a lot of plans for the exams in a little over 6 months. In her last report, that I actually went in person to receive, there will be a joint attack on Konoha. Her musing stopped there for but a moment, Naruto feeling her worry. No reason for that, Mizuhime. I've already started making plans for the snake. It's unfortunate, but my spy will surely be outed when I move against him after he enacts his plan. Do I need to have forces prepared for assistance? Her worry was still there, but Naruto effortlessly kissed her forehead and smiled. Not for now, I'll tell you more later. For now, that wolfish smirk came to his face, and before she knew it she found herself under him. I believe you mentioned a reward for my cooperation, any Mizuhime, she nearly screamed when his lip assaulted her, knowing full well what her weaknesses were. She couldn't help the tightening in her nether regions as she felt the iron-like grip on her wrists, now held above her head. Such a naughty boy, Naruto-kun, the purr escaped her lips before their after-hours escapades started anew. Jiraiya suddenly looked up from the haggard Menma, a confused look on his face. For some reason, I feel a tingling in the perversion that tells me I should be proud of Naruto, he mumbled, looking thoughtful. Menma looked beaten, but managed to give his grandfather a look that belayed how stupid he thought the man was in that moment. How I ended up with such a stupid pervert for a grandfather, I'll never understand, the boy complained, earning an aghast look from the white-haired man. I'm not stupid, the man simply responded, only making Menma look at him as if he found a new lower level of stupidity. Anyway, Tsunadeheim probably has dinner nearly done, go get cleaned up and let's eat. Arojiji, the boy grumbled, doing as he was told. Jiraiya-sama, a new figure asked, the older shinobi looking back to see a masked Anbu bowing before him. Hokage-sama has summoned you, something that cannot wait, the man said before disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. Damn monkey, can't even let me enjoy a simple dinner with my family, he sighed, before making his way to inform Tsunade and then to the said monkey's office. Within 10 minutes, he was already stepping in through the window of the Hokage office, essentially his family's special entrance. What is it that couldn't have waited? The Sandame regarded his former student, noting his clear annoyance. Forgive my intrusion on your evening, but I've opened a report from one of Naruto's contacts, he sighed, tossing the man the scroll before lighting his pipe. It would seem our snake problem of old has a few tricks up his sleeve for the coming months, starting with the academy graduation. So, you want me to go ahead and squash the bug? We know who it is and quite frankly it explains his attitude towards Menma, Jiraiya said, seemingly a bit bored as he read the encrypted message. No, I want them to have a false sense of security. When he makes his move then we will respond, the Hokage said with an exhale of smoke. After all, I'd very much like to know what it is my old student is after with this move of his. From what it says here, a plethora of things, our forbidden scroll being one of the first, and while I suppose you know the rest, the Toad Sage let out a sigh of resignation, wondering why the old monkey wanted them to even wait. But he wasn't foolhardy enough to not know the man had some inclination of a plan for it. For the moment, I want you to keep an eye on Menma's class, see if there's anything you can learn. His order was clear, and all it served to do was make the Sannin groan. First Naruto makes more work for me, and now you want to add this on my plate. I'm supposed to be retired. The glare was ever present, and only caused the aged Kage to chuckle. You know retirement is never a true thing for people in our line of work, Jiraiya-kun. No, go and enjoy the rest of your night. I won't disturb you again until needed. The monkey waved him off, turning to look out his window at the monument of the Kage. I'm sure you would have loved to see all of this, and what your family has grown into, Minato-kun, Kushina-chan, he thought solemnly, not fighting the small smile thinking of those two brought him. Naruto stood patiently in a clearing halfway in between the border of Hai no Kuni and Konohagakure, nearly exactly halfway in between. A few steps behind him was Mei, waiting just as patiently as her husband-to-be. However, the third to their traveling party back to Konoha, Momochi Zabuza, was beyond antsy by this point. What is it exactly we're waiting for here, Gaki? Naruto sighed at the differently worded question he'd already answered twice now. Just be patient, Zabuza-sensei, they're nearly here, not much longer, he said with a sigh, earning yet another grunt from the man. Trust me, I'd much rather be on our way back to Konoha, but our delayed stay in Kiri forced me behind schedule. May gave his back a weak glare, she knew that was directed towards her in some way or form, forcefully having to bite back the retort that he hadn't been complaining in her private quarters about them being behind schedule. But she knew now was not the time nor the place, and chose to just watch the blonde as he stood there. He was wearing a pair of black pants taped around the calves that went down into his black shinobi sandals, a black long-sleeved shirt with the crimson swirl of the Uzumaki on either shoulder with the sleeves rolled up, and his green jounin vest with a similar symbol on the back. But possibly her favorite part of the attire was the gift she had presented him with during their time in her home village. It was a white battle cloth hanging from his waist, blue flames licking the bottom with an intricate depiction of a snarling wolf, and the newly instated symbol of the reborn Uzumaki clan. The crimson swirl standing out on the front of the cloth seemingly growing out of a brilliant blue lotus. He had worn the garment nearly nonstop since she gave it to him, the man actually complaining that he hadn't gotten her anything so nice. Just as her eyes were beginning to wander over his form for a third time, she heard the sound of leaves rustling before someone burst from the foliage above, immediately falling to a knee before Naruto. The first thing she noticed was the girl's long red hair, and then the strange outfit she wore. If she had to compare it to anything, it would be what Naruto had described Orochimaru's usual attire as. Not that she knew how the boy knew that, but she just chalked that up to the boy's most recent occupation for his village. Report, his voice stern and commanding, something she rarely heard. Orochimaru has received word that your brother was the one to stop his spy, Mizuki, from stealing the forbidden scroll of sealing. She looked up, revealing brown eyes to him, but also a new scar on her chin. He assumed the snake had taken it out on his subordinate, and for a moment, he needed to rein in his anger. What of his future plans? They're all in the scroll. I don't want to speak any details aloud. Very well, stand up and turn around, the blonde ordered, and May found herself raising a curious brow at that one. If for some reason he suspects you, the seal I'm placing on your lower spine will allow you to call me for evacuation. Has he done something new to your curse mark? The girl, maybe at most 2 or 3 years his younger, was thankful he couldn't see her face, or the blush present from his hand working over her back. But she could feel the glare on her back from the other woman in the clearing. He's unlocked the second form of the mark. If not for the damn seal you placed on my scalp, I'm sure I would have lost my mind to the disgusting fucking chakra it brings out. Language, his voice once more stern, only earning a nod from the girl. This will be the last time we meet like this until things start. I don't want him to discover you or any of our other friends. Any Taiyu-chan? Hi, Naruto-sama. He could hear the smile in her voice, before patting her on the back and watching as she sped off. So, now we can head out? Naruto groaned at the voice of the swordsman before tiredly nodding with an eye roll. As the group fell into pace, May and Naruto drifted behind a bit. You know she's got a thing for you, right? Naruto immediately raised his brow at his future wife. You're kidding, right? How would you figure something like that? Call it woman's intuition. At least she's cute. The woman shrugged, now making the blonde look at her as if she'd grown a second head. Oh, don't act so innocent and oblivious. That stopped working on me long ago, Naruto-kun. The purr made his spine shiver. Why did she even purr that? You utterly confused me. Menma smiled foxily, proudly sitting in his spot with a shiny new Konoha Hittite around his forehead. It was the day following the exams and ceremony that his brother had actually made it in time for, every newly minted genin waiting for team assignments. It was nearly a week after Mizuki had attacked him on his way out with the forbidden scroll, leading to the Uzumaki deftly kicking the Chunin's ass. In short, the crimson-haired boy was beyond elated with himself and the happenings of the past week. As per usual, Sasuke slept undisturbed to his left, Sakura on his right looking googly-eyed at the Uchiha, and Ino directly behind him, though he was unaware of the Yamanaka heiress' googly eyes pointedly staring at him, per usual. Yumino Irika chose that moment to walk in, a clipboard under his arm and a smile on his face. Good morning, Genin. Each former student returned his smile at that. Congratulations once more to all of you here for passing. It was a joy to have each of you here the past years. Moving forward into your career, I want you all to know that things will be getting much harder for you. The path of a shinobi is seldom ever an easy one, and rarely is one's life not in danger on our chosen path. I want you all to heed this warning, do your best, and learn everything your jounin captains have to teach you. It may just save your life someday. With his speech at an end, he got to the duty of calling out team assignments. Team 7, Hareno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Namake's Menma. Your jounin instructor will be Hataki Kakashi. Sakura cheered at being on the same team as Sasuke, even if she had to wait through the first 6 team announcements to find out. Sasuke merely smirked at Menma, who shot back that foxy grin of his before the 2 fists bumped. Team 8, Oburaim Shino, Hyuga Hinata and Inazuka Kiba. Your sensei will be Yuhi Kurinai, Irika continued, looking up at the happy yip of Kiba's Niken, Akamaru before returning to his duty. Team 9 remains in rotation from last year, so Team 10 will be Akimichi Choji, Naro Shikamaru and Yamanaka Ino. Your sensei will be Saratobi-sama. And with that, comes the end of my job. Your senseis will arrive shortly. Good luck. Man, why can't I be on the team with Mema-kun? You've got all the luck, forehead. Ino pouted, rather cutely. You can have him, Sakura said, making the crimson-haired boy pout. I'm just happy to be on a team with Sasuke-kun. Her smile was large, completely unaware of the annoyed look sent by said Uchiha. Yo, Team 7, I'll be leading you to your meeting place. Menma found himself shocked to look up and find his older brother, standing there with a Kakashi-styled eye smile. Whispers about the man seemed to break out amongst the freshly minted teens, making him look around curiously. Was it something I said? You've kind of got that effect, Nai-chan, even if half of them already know you, Menma explained, walking up to stand next to his brother, shortly followed by Sasuke. Sakura-chan, you coming? He asked the still-sitting girl, his foxy grin on full display. Pinky, I don't have all day, Naruto grumbled, a small glare sent at the girl, who bolted to his side after receiving it. My name is Sakura, not Pinky, and my brother's name is Menma, not Baka. The youngest Uzumaki was rather surprised Sakura actually had the guts to full-on match his brother's glare, but was even more surprised when his brother smirked widely. You've got guts, Pinky, I respect that. Sakura, whatever, Pinky. Menma was positive he'd be receiving the punishment for his brother's nickname of his new teammate. He knew Sakura all too well. Roughly an hour later, the group of 4 sat on the roof of the academy, only one of them patiently awaiting the arrival of their wayward sensei. That one person being Menma, as even Naruto was irately glaring at anything. Sakura was glaring at the blonde, and Sasuke was, well, he was asleep. Thank you for picking up the students, Naruto. A black cat crossed my path and his excuse wasn't allowed to continue as the blonde shot a kunai at him that forced him to duck. You've become lazy since leaving the Umbu Nai-chan. I suppose that's why the old monkey asked me to help with your team, the blonde glared heatedly, making the elder Jounin look at him sheepishly. Anyway, Sasuke, Menma, you already know Kakashi and I. Pinky meet Hatake Kakashi. Sakura, what's Pinky's problem? Kakashi asked, making the girl all out fume with unbridled anger. Yup, Menma was definitely going to catch the brunt of this. Damn it, my name is Haruno Sakura. She emphasized her words by decking the crimson-haired boy next to her. Naruto responded by chucking a kunai at her, the blunted ring of it smacking into her forehead and sending her flying across the rooftop. Bad Pinky, he admonished the now unconscious girl, making Kakashi sigh. I believe you went too far, Otoro, the Jounin sensei sighed, visibly displeased. She's fine, look, she's already getting back up, the blonde pointed out, and Kakashi was surprised to see the girl stumbling back to where she had flown from, now sitting obediently, where once before she had unashamedly glared at the blonde and hit his Otoro. Gomen, Naruto-sama, she said, making the blonde raise a brow before shrugging. Menma had long since returned to his spot, looking at Sakura with some worry in his violet eyes. Alright, now that we're all settled, Sasuke, wake up, Kakashi began, sending a bored look to the boy who easily did as asked, yawning loudly. Now then, let's move on to formal introduction, including my assistant Jounin instructor. I smiled, jabbing a thumb at the eldest Uzumaki. I'm going to snap that monkey in half for making me do something so troublesome. Kakashi only chuckled at that, before continuing on with ease. Kakashi gave them his notorious eye smile. I'll start us off, Naruto, and the rest of you will follow. His eye smile only seemed to deepen at his words. My name is Hatake Kakashi. I like a lot of different things, dislike a few, and don't entirely have a dream of any kind for the future. Each of the genin, even Naruto, could only deadpan at the man's flippant attitude. He literally only told them his name at most. The blonde sighed deeply. Guess that means it's my turn. My name is Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto. I'm the head of the Uzumaki clan. I like nature, ramen, Mei-chan, and my family. He sent a small smile to his brother. I dislike those who judge without knowing, fangirls and traitors. As for my dreams of the future, I wish to find a lasting peace for the shinobi world and see my clan reborn. He smiled before looking towards Sakura. Ladies first, Pinky. Sakura weakly glared at the nickname, now knowing better than to piss of their secondary sensei. My name is Haruno Sakura. I like reading, refining my chakra control in Dango. If Naruto gathered anything from the side glance she sent Sasuke, there was one more thing she wished to add to that list but left out for whatever reason. I dislike loud and rude people, and people who underestimate others. As for my dream, I want to be a medic nin and marry someone special to me. Again, she sent a glance towards the yawning Uchiha, who seemed anything but impressed. My turn, Menma declared, his foxy grin ever present. My name is Uzumaki Namikaze Menma, and I like ramen, training, and my family. Again, a smile was shared between the two brothers. I dislike the 3 minutes it takes to cook up ramen. That Bachan won't let me eat all the ramen I want. Perverts and traitors. I dream to help Nai-chan with his dreams and take the Hokage's hat from the old monkey. He beamed at that, showing 2 thumbs up. Sasuke grunted, before continuing in a sedate pace. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I like some things and dislike a great deal more, especially traitors. Naruto seemed annoyed at the aloof way the boy started, but his eyes softened at the final statement. It would seem the youngest Uchiha had been holding his father's actions close in mind. I don't really have a dream, more of an ambition to bring a certain man to justice. He glared at the ground as a pair of distinct mangekyo flashed through his mind. Naruto and Kakashi shared a look, the blonde not liking the goal of his best friend's kid brother in the slightest. He'd be sure to keep a close eye on the boy. Well, I think that sums us up, Kaka-senpai. The blonde nonchalantly smiled, earning an eye smile from the Hataki. Good, I want each of you to head home. Tomorrow it will be you three and I going through your first test as a team. Meet at training ground 7. He eye smiled before disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Well, I have other places to be. I'll see you Gakis later in Pinky. He smirked when the girl glared at him. Should you all pass Kakashi's test tomorrow, come home with Menma and I'll introduce you to someone who may be able to help with one of your goals. With that, the blonde vanished in a right unshunshin that mystified Sakura, the only one not used to seeing it. So, Menma smiled brightly. How about we go out for our first dinner as a team? No ramen, Sasuke immediately said, making the crimson-haired boy pout greatly. Fine, we can go to the Akimichi barbecue. I'll even pay, he smiled, earning a nod from the Uchiha. The black-haired boy most likely already thinking about their fire-roasted tomato dish. You and Sakura-chan? His smile, for the first time to the pinkette, was infectious. Sure, I didn't know you actually ate anything other than ramen, she pointed out with a small laugh. Menma chuckled. As much as I'd like to, Bachan says I'd be a midget if I did, and she was reminded that he indeed was the tallest of them, if only by inches at best. Hurry up you two, Sasuke called over his shoulder, already jumping to the adjacent rooftop, either seemingly taking notice of his momentary departure. Sweet, taking the Konoha Speedway, the crimson-haired boy smirked, easily knocked from his sudden surprise. Hope you can keep up, Sakura-chan, Databeo. Her green eyes widened as he sped off to catch up. Hey, wait a damn minute, Shinaro. All the while, the three were unaware of their pair of sensei watching them with smiles. Maybe they won't be as hard to manage as you originally thought, Naruto smiled, knowing he was quite possibly wrong. Give them time, their faults will show and we'll correct them. Kakashi smiled, actually smiled. But they just might pass my test on their first chance. Naruto laughed. All of my team grew up together, and it took us until the second try to pass. They'll be the same, he joked, remembering fondly the times of old behind him. My genuine team was much the same, the silver-haired Jounin agreed. Anyway, don't forget to send a Kagebunshin to watch the happenings of the test tomorrow. Nah, I'll be there with Mei-chan, she'll want to see how Otoro does. And considering she won't have any meetings, she won't let me talk her out of it, he laughed, before pushing himself off the ledge he was sitting on. Speaking of Mei-chan, she's been waiting for me long enough, Ja-ni, Kaka and I. He smiled before disappearing in a hurrition. Kakashi only I smiled, laying down on the roof and pulling out his favorite book. It was a quiet enough place for the lazy Jounin to sit back and enjoy his book, Ika Tactics, The Wolf and the Water Priestess. He released a perverted giggle. Jiraiya-sama is quite lucky Otoro has yet to read his latest installment, he ideally noted. A certain white-haired super pervert sneezing and alerting the hot spring full of women he was spying on. The blonde reappeared within his room, smiling at the Mizukage curled into the couch reading the scroll he had been given by his contact a few days prior. He was teaching her his coding system. Being his future wife, it would only prove to help them both, especially if she wanted/needed to send him something privately. Welcome home, Naruto-kun, she smiled, looking up to him. You're getting better at sensing me, Mei-chan, he chuckled, taking a seat next to her and pulling her to him. How goes your learning? It's not too complex or too simple of a thing to learn, she yawned, nuzzling back into that strange ever-present warmth of his. What did you think of Menma-kun's team? Well, I've left an impression on the girl on his team, Haruno Sakura, he chuckled, the woman raising a brow at him. I threw the blunt end of kunai at her forehead after she hit Menma, seems obsessed with Sasuke, but I think I can work those fangirl tendencies out of her. Imagine when they find out how calculated you are, to purposefully target such a thing, she smirked, knowing full well where his planning was leading. She herself, being the kunoichi she was, hated the idea of fangirl kunoichi being sent out on a team. They were just too immature and distracted for some of the subtleties of being a shinobi, just holding on to their childish ways. But it also made her wonder if even at the age of 13 if they were still too young to become shinobi. Well, I've also offered that Menma may bring her here should they pass tomorrow to meet Tsunade Bachan, hoping she'll be willing to help the girl with her dream. She wishes to be a medic? Yes, and of course Tsunade would be the best to help her with that dream. But the decision is up to Tsunade if she helps or not. So, then you intend to focus on Menma's training and Kakashi on Sasuke's, while Tsunade helps Sakura? No, I'll be helping each of them equally. I don't like shirking responsibility, and despite their faults, I do see a lot of potential in their future. May finally sighed, relaxing back into his firm muscular chest. You want to go out for some drinks? Naruto shrugged. I mean, if your only intention is to get in my pants, I have plenty to drink here. His laugh when she popped his chest was wolfish. Damn pervert, she grumbled, getting up to put on some comfortable clothes. I was kidding, and it's not like you weren't holding that as your endgame, Mei-chan, he chuckled, standing and removing his flak jacket and waistcloth. He took the time to place them on the display he kept in his room, where his mother's katana now stayed unless he was on mission or summoned it. Mei smiled slightly as she watched him gently fold the cloth, gingerly placing it right under the displayed katana and Jounin vest. But her look became leering when he pulled his shirt over his head, freely displaying those rippling muscles she loved so much. "You're gawking again," his tease-earned address thrown his way, igniting a blush on his face. Now it was his turn to gawk, as the dress fell from his face, revealing her bare goddess-like figure to his eyes. Curves in the absolutely most perfect of places, shapely, legs that went on for miles and a firm, cellulite-free rear. "You're gawking again," she laughed at turning his words against him. Oh, how she loved the way his eyes drank her in, like it was the first time every time he saw her like this. She could literally feel the pout directed at her, as she pulled a pair of black leggings on, hiding what was most certainly his two favorite parts of her figure, her thighs and butt. She took the moment, still shirtless, to saunter over to him with that damnable sway to her hips. "Later, my wolf, now get dressed," she said, nearly making him break as she pushed her well-endowed chest against him as she kissed his cheek. "Damn minx," he grumbled, pulling a plain, orange, long-sleeved shirt over his head. May heard him and smiled as she walked to his closet, pulling out a blue long-sleeved shirt that was clearly too big for her, bearing the markings of the Uzumaki Namikaze clan on its back. Naruto smiled at this habit of hers, knowing full well she had several very similar shirts of different colorations in her closet back in Kirigakure. If he was completely honest with himself, he loved that she wore his clothing to be comfy, and Kami did she look gorgeous in them. "You ready?" She smiled, and Naruto pulled her towards him, crashing his lips to hers. After a moment, May pulled back giggling. "And what was that for?" "You know what for, you damn minx," he smirked, taking her hand in his and leading her out. "Bachan, we're going out for the night," he called out as they neared the entryway of the home. "Don't worry, I won't let him get too drunk, Tsunade-basama." It still felt odd to May calling her idol such, but the woman had insisted since the day their marriage was announced to the public. "Thank you, May-chan." Naruto glared at the call of his grandmother, then turned it to the woman at his side, only to receive that damnable giggle of hers before she pulled him out of the house with ease. The next morning saw Naruto sitting in a tree, concealed from any watching eyes, with a bottle of sake in his hand and a snoozing May's head rested on his shoulder. He held his Sharingan eye closed, the eye proving to increase the severity of his headache. His blue eye being focused on the 3 genin he and Kakashi would be responsible for. "I see I wasn't the only one with idea of watching our brother's trial," a subdued voice spoke, Naruto just grunting in the man's general vicinity. "Long night of drinking," Itachi stated, having seen the blonde like this on more than one occasion. Naruto nodded his head, extending his sake bottle towards the Uchiha clan heir. What Jiraiya and Tsunade had taught him was the polite thing to do. The Uchiha shrugged, actually accepting the sake and taking a short sip. "Couldn't have been too long of a night if you're still drinking," he chuckled, earning a smirk from his friend. "Best thing for a hangover is to drink it away, or so Jiraiya says," he chuckled back, feeling May begin to wake. "Is that Ko-sensei of yours still not here?" She yawned, having had the time to simply sleep off her own hangover. "It's the Kakashi way," Naruto and Itachi said at the same time, both nodding sagely for whatever reason. "I'll take that as a no," she shook her head, honestly not used to it from the man. He'd never done anything of the sort during the rebellion, but she supposed it was different times. What have those 3 been doing? For the most part, plotting their vengeance against Kaka and I, but they've also managed to put together a plan of some kind. I honestly wasn't paying enough attention, and with my Sharingan increasing my headache, I couldn't read their lips, the blonde answered, earning a sympathetic look from his female companion. Down below, Sakura was looking at Menma as if he'd lost his mind, or rather like she'd never seen him before. He wasn't being the normal prankster, quirky, loud-mouthed idiot she had become accustomed to during their academy days. The crimson-haired boy was displaying a tactical mind, and a sharp one at that, as they talked over their plan. Apparently the Uzumaki had deduced that this would be a test of their abilities to work as a team, Sasuke quickly agreeing with his own smirk. "Okay, so, what are we going to do to show teamwork exactly?" the pinkette asked, honestly curious as to see how well he thought this through. "Well, Kakashi knows Sasuke and I know how to work together, so after we first take the chance to hide and regroup, the 2 of us are going to charge in and engage. That should give you an opening to go after whatever it is he's going to be holding over our heads, I'm assuming bells." The bell test is a time-honored test that the Nidaime introduced when training the Sandaime. Just about every Jounin sensei uses it. "I remember Naruto and I having to do it with Mikotoba when I was younger." He paused, as it seemed Sakura had a question to ask. "How are you so sure he's going to use this test, even if it is tradition?" "It's Kakashi-sensei, he's too lazy to come up with something else," the crimson-haired boy deadpanned, Sasuke nodding in agreement. Sakura had no means to argue that point. It was the first impression the man's attitude quite literally bashed her over the head with. "So, what if this plan doesn't work, or if it does?" The pinkette was quick to move on to her next question. "Well, from what I remember there's only going to be 2 bells, supposedly for 2 genin to pass and the 3rd to fail. But that's the trick in it, one of us will have to willingly give up the bell we'd initially be thrown to show we'd fail for our team if necessary. If we don't take the bell, then we still proved we can work as a team and we'll just have to cement it as we continue to go through the test," Menma explained, Sasuke now raising a brow. "That's if Kakashi remembers to actually show up," the youngest Uchiha grumbled, earning a sweat drop from his best friend. Touché. Roughly an hour and a half later, the Genin's trial had now been going on for 30 minutes, the 3 standing shoulder to shoulder as they panted from exhaustion. Kakashi was smiling at them, like he hadn't made them wait a total of 3 hours, his orange little book happily within his grasp. He was honestly surprised to see them working together like this. Menma and Sasuke wasn't such a surprise, but Sakura actually putting her infatuation aside and working just as hard as the two boys was more than he could have expected. Maybe he should have actually bet Naruto. These three were definitely passing so far, but he still wanted to see if they could actually manage to get the bells from him, which meant no more games. With that thought, he clapped his book shut, returning it back to his kunai pouch and began reaching to lift his headband. Menma and Sasuke were the first to move, both knowing full well what that article of clothing hid. Sasuke was the first to make it to the jounin, sending a high axe kick to his head. Menma came shortly behind him, sending his own kick to the man's thigh in an attempt to buckle his knee. But the seasoned jounin was quick to block both strikes and pull up his headband regardless, displaying that Sharingan he was famed for owning. No more games, Genin, it's time for make or break. Menma quickly jumped forward, continuing his attempts to hit his older brother figure turned sensei. But the jounin was now moving faster, easily countering the blonde as if it was nothing. However, Kakashi missed Sasuke flipping away and making hand signs, but not the smirk on the crimson-haired boy's face. Katon, Gakyaku no Jutsu! The Uchiha roared, and Kakashi's eyes widened. Menma was still in the way and would be hit with the jutsu. Quickly unleashing a kick to the still smirking boy's side, his eyes widened as who he just kicked disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Kagebunshin when? He couldn't think about it then. He had to move out of the line of literal fire. Quickly putting all of his weight onto his planted foot, and channeling some chakra for good measure, he jumped clear over the impressively sized fireball. His eyes widened in shock again, however, as a barrage of kunai came into his line of vision, coming from his pink-haired student. The mask he wore hid a proud smile as he used the ultimate cop-out, Kawarimi, to substitute himself for one of the logs that littered the training ground. He was quickly back on the attack, charging for the team's weakest member Sakura. But as he reached halfway, his eyes widened when he saw several members burst from the ground all around him. So, you've gotten better with the Kagebunshin, and in general, no wonder you were able to beat a Chunin. Kakashi smiled proudly at him, earning that foxy grin. But there was no respite as the clones jumped him, Sasuke joining the fray and Sakura hanging back to throw kunai at him if he escaped. But her green eyes widened when within seconds, there were 6 pops and then the real Menma and Sasuke were sent careening past her. Just you and me now, Pinky. His tone was jovial and flippant all at once, and it annoyed Sakura greatly. He watched as the girl pulled a fresh kunai from her weapon's pouch, taking a taijutsu stance. It's an academy stance, but it's one of the best they taught, and it seems she's quite confident in it, he thought as he pulled a kunai from his holster to match his student. Come on, show me what you can do, he taunted, motioning her towards him with his hand. They traded blades for a moment, the girl showing her skill to be higher than Kakashi had initially thought. He was mildly impressed with the girl, and had plenty enough time to see any and all blaring weaknesses. He'd keep them in mind to correct them later, and he was sure their audience would do the same. Just as he was about to kick the girl, his eyes widened when Menma caught the appendage, a feral glare directed straight at him. But not a moment later that glare became a grin, when 3 more clones burst from the ground, one grabbing him in a full Nelson, the other grabbing his planted leg and the third snatching the bells from his waist. Kakashi allowed his eyes to widen as Menma flipped away after grabbing Sakura in his arms, his clone and Sasuke joining him, the clone handing him the 2 bells after he sat a blushing Sakura on her feet. But the smile came to his face when the crimson-haired Uzumaki handed Sasuke 1 bell and another to Sakura, beaming as the girl thanked him. Well, Team 7, it's official, you pass. Naruto sat on the branch high above, looking at his brother's back with a proud smile, Itachi and Mei doing much of the same. Well, it looks like you two are stuck with them now. Itachi chuckled, proud that his brother had worked so hard with his team for this win of theirs. I guess you'll be having to spend more time away from me when I am here in village, Mei pouted, Naruto shaking his head at her exasperatedly. Is all you think about dates and monopolizing my time when you're here? Mei looked thoughtful for more than a moment, her finger pressed to her chin as she looked towards the sky for added effect, before turning to him and proudly saying, yes. Naruto rolled his eyes and chuckled at her, before kissing her cheek. Damn minx. Looks like Kakashi has finished his speech and they're leaving already, Itachi noted, far beyond used to these two being all lovey-dovey around him. Kakashi and I is a cheapskate, they'll be headed to Ikaraku, Naruto said, standing on the branch and offering his hand to Mei to help her up. The woman accepted it easily, looking forward to joining her future brother-in-law's team for this celebratory lunch. You coming? Itachi shook his head in the negative. I have to return to Kaachan, she's still training me in the procedures of the clan head. Tell sensei I'll come by and see her soon, I'm sure she could use the distraction from her newly busy schedule. The blonde laughed, earning a thankful smile from his friend. Be sure to take good care of my Otoro when the real missions begin, he asked, bumping the blonde's offered fist as they usually did to say goodbye. As if he was my own, Naruto smiled before the 3 disappeared, Itachi heading in the opposite direction. It wasn't long before the blonde and his companion landed gracefully in front of the ramen stand, the young team already inside judging from the boisterous voice of Menma within. Mei lead the way, sneaking up behind her future brother-in-law to surprise him with a hug, the crimson-haired boy jumping in surprise. Mei-chan, what are you doing here? You didn't honestly think we weren't watching, did you, Otoro? Naruto answered for the doting woman, smiling at his little brother with pride. I'm very proud of how all three of you did in your trial today, and as such, the lunch is on me, he smiled, pointedly giving Sakura a longer glance than the two boys. And don't worry, I'll make good on my promise from yesterday. Sakura beamed at that, having already deduced who she was hopefully going to meet today. The only medical ninja she knew within the Uzumaki clan was Senju Tsunade, her all-time idol. Thank you, Naruto-sensei. Sure thing, Pinky, he chuckled, patting the girl on the head before taking the open seat next to his Oturo. Mei sitting next to him and continuing her doting over the boy as the blonde placed their order. The team, their senseis and their guests all talked animatedly as they waited for their meal, and throughout the entire thing. This being the first time Sakura had not seen Menma eating bowl after bowl like a man possessed. Apparently, the Mizukage brought some of the forgotten manners out of him, and it was that fact that made her wonder how much she didn't know about the boy, especially as the protective feeling she'd felt from him when he stopped Kakashi's kick and when he had held her bridal style resurfaced in the back of her mind. She instantly stomped that thought down. There was absolutely no way she was having any interest in Uzumaki Namikaze's Menma. Besides, what would Ino think? She couldn't do that to her oldest friend. She sneaked a peek at him, seeing the lively smile on his face that was most certainly the most infectious thing in the world. Okay, maybe no. She wanted to pull her hair out at just the idea, let alone the internal battle these emotions brought up. Alright, well if we're all done, let's head out, Naruto said, placing more than enough payment on the counter for all the group had eaten and drank. Thanks for the hospitality, Tochijiji. I am Chan. See you next time. Quit leaving so much money, Gaki. Tochi raged as his favorite customers, namely the Uzumaki Namikazes, walked out of the stand. The old man only smiled, shaking his head as he pocketed the money. Remind me to talk to Naruto about investing in the stand. Maybe then he'll let me feed him for free. I doubt that too, Chan, the girl giggled, knowing how her father would happily let that family eat for free if they'd let him. Bachan, I've got someone here I want you to meet, Naruto called into the home as he walked in, holding the door open for Mei, Menma and Sakura. I'm drinking, you come to me, he heard the woman call back, making him chuckle and lead the way into the house. Sakura looked around in wonder as they walked from the ornate entranceway into a masterpiece of a living room/lounge, connected to a bar area and the kitchen proper. Then, her eyes landed on the legendary medic herself, the woman clearly enjoying a bottle of sake with two others present. I want you to meet one of my students and Menma's teammate, Hareno Sakura. She's got interest in becoming a medical ninja, he smiled, seeing her sitting in the lounge with a saucer of sake, a napping Jiraiya with his head on her lap and Shizen smiling at the group from a chair. So, I guess you want to guilt-trip me into training her then, Gaki? She asked with a raised brow, watching as Mei and he sat on the couch adjacent from her and Jiraiya. No, I won't guilt-trip you, but I'll ask you to consider it. I think you'd be impressed with her control, he smiled, waving for Sakura to find a seat as Menma did the same. She doesn't have much of a reserve, but she's got enough to work with and how I'm going to train their team. It won't be that way for long. Tsunade looked the girl over, noticing the nervousness radiating off her in droves. But she still tried to throw up a brave front, and that made the woman smile. She wasn't well built, most likely due to some stupid dieting routine that no ninja in her lifetime actually ever needed. But the slug princess could see an underlying formation of muscle there as well, uncommon for many civilian clan members her age. So, what makes you think I should train you? The Sannin blatantly asked, and Sakura was clearly caught off guard. Did this mean she was actually willing to train her? I'm obedient and will do whatever you deem necessary, Tsunade-sama. I work hard and if you're willing to give me the chance, I'll show you. Tsunade picked up the determination coming to life in those green eyes. I'm also not the strongest, but if I can become your student, I'll be able to help Sasuke and Menma in a better way. Tsunade hummed, dissecting the girl's answer in her mind. Giving your redeeming qualities and even your blaring weakness, you're very aware of your own shortcomings, and I can appreciate that. Should I agree to this, my first order will be you stopping any of those pointless diets you've put yourself through. You're going to need well-balanced and full meals if you want me to make you something. Next, you'll address me as Shursho. And lastly, you'll understand that when I say I'm gonna work you into the ground, I mean it. You may even want to ask one of the Gakis to prepare a room for you to stay in here from time to time. The warning of how brutal any training the Sannin would give was clear as day to the girl, as the blonde-haired woman smirked at the renewal of the girl's nervousness. But it widened into a smile when the pinkette washed it off a moment later for a look of sure determination. I understand, Shursho. Tsunade smirked at the bowing pinkette. Maybe her grandson was right about this one. Good, now why don't you and Menma go run off and do something? He can give you the tour, she said, shooing the two away and taking the last chug of her sake. If I break her, don't blame me. It was said after the two genin were out of earshot, directed to a now chuckling Naruto. At least I know you'll put her back together, Bachan. Naruto smiled, and the woman rolled her eyes before looking to the Mizukage next to him, lounging back into his chest with her own saucer of sake. I suspect you two enjoyed your night last night? Mei nodded happily as she nuzzled herself further back into Naruto, earning a smile from the blonde as he gently kissed the side of her head. Good. But please make sure your shinobi know to clean up any mess they make on the grounds. The pervert slipped on a patch of ice this morning. Trust me, as funny as it was to me, I already have to heal the idiot more than enough. Mei giggled in response. I'll go speak with Zabuza-chan and Haku-kun about that immediately. I do have a meeting with the Hokage shortly, so I need to find them anyway, she said, standing up from her position with Naruto's hand in hers. I suppose you'll be heading towards the Uchiha compound before long? I may train Menma and Sakura for a couple hours before, he shrugged, smiling at her as she leaned down and kissed him. I'll see you tonight then. Tonight, Naruto smiled, watching very intently as she went on her way. You're drooling, Tsunade idly commented, Naruto actually going to wipe his mouth, not catching his grandmother being sarcastic. Men, she rolled her eyes, casting a glance down at the still snoozing pervert, a loving glint in her honey brown eyes. I see that my little Otoro has gotten quite lucky in the relationship department, Shizen commented, making the blonde smile. I'll happily agree with you there, Shizen. Now if you'll excuse me, I've got 2 gakis to find. He smiled before getting up and going on his own way. It was at this moment Tsunade chose to give a look of scrutiny to her eldest student. When are you gonna try to go for a man? I'm stuck with a pervert. Don't you have anyone in mind? Shizen blushed brightly, waving her hands defensively. Tsunade-sama, don't worry, I have someone in mind, she assured, only garnering a skeptical look from the legendary medic. If you say so. It's been some time since I've seen you drink, sensei, the blonde smiled, appearing on the back porch of the Uchiha clan's main house. Makoto looked at him for only a moment before downing the saucer she had poured herself before placing it down beside her, and pouring another for herself, and one for him in the second waiting saucer. Well, it's been some time since you've come and seen me. This has become somewhat of a ritual of mine after dealing with a day's work, she calmly admitted. Naruto, catching the wafting smell of alcohol on her breath thanks to his enhanced senses, a sign she'd been at it for a while. Looking forward to being a sensei on top of already being a clan head? Not entirely, but my clan, if you want to call it that at this stage, is quite small and yields much less paperwork than you'd imagine, he sighed, accepting the saucer from her and sipping it slowly. Most of my work comes from the network, and as much as Erojiji complains about it, I have help there. She grunted, in a fashion similar to her youngest son. Any news on my little problem? No, he's not resurfaced since that night. Begrudgingly, I must admit my surprise he's been so capable of avoiding my network, the blonde sighed. Even with some of the hardest to come by targets he set for his network, they always found something. But the man couldn't avoid him forever. But I suppose it has more to do with that masked bastard than his own skill. Do you think it's possible my husband is the reason that man was able to stage the attack way back then? I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think Fugaku didn't start any partnership with the unknown man until the effects of the attack had been taken out on the Uchiha clan. Makoto sighed at this, her well-hidden sadness openly on display before her student. I should have fought his rise to the clan head harder all those years ago. Maybe I could have saved him from this path. She was trying to lay the blame at her own feet, and Naruto glared at her for it. The path he chose was his own mistake, and you can't blame yourself for the mistakes of another, Makoto-sensei. He hated seeing her this way, but he knew the toll all of this had on her. Maybe you should take some time off and allow Itachi to take over for a bit. It sounds like you could use it. Makoto laughed lightly at that, downing her saucer for the second time since his arrival. Itachi himself would say he's not ready for such a thing. Was I ready for that responsibility? To manage clan accounts and funding at the age I was elevated to clan head status? To be responsible for my entire family and their well-being? Makoto sighed at his harsh tone. She hadn't meant to hit a nerve like that, but she supposed he was madder about her not taking care of herself, rather than calling Itachi's ability into question. I suppose you have a fair point. I guess I'm just reluctant to let even my son take the reins for the clan. I want to keep him from that same dark path. Naruto scoffed at that, downing his own sake. Itachi would never betray the village, even if forced to make it look that way by some insane plot. He'd still always hold this place first in his heart. That's because it was the way you showed him, he said with a hard gaze. Begging her to see his side brought a pause to any form of rebuttal. If he ever did, it wouldn't be any fault of your own either, but I'd still make him regret that decision. The exact way I'll make Fugaku regret it with my own hands. His mangekyo flared with his anger, causing a small smile to come to the woman's face. You're so much like her it's uncanny. This admission of hers caused the blonde to pause, knowing exactly who she meant. There was only one person he missed so dearly that she would bring up in such a veiled way to disguise her own hurt. To think you had wondered at some point if they'd be proud of who you are, the morals you uphold, and the way you respond to the darkness of our world. Her smile became fond as she reflected on memories long buried. I still have my doubts. I've done many things that I know go against their way. He sounded somber at that, but now it was Makoto's turn to scoff at him. Still an idiot deep down, my cute little Genin. Naruto glared at her, in her mind cutely, for the use of an old nickname. But, it would seem the change of topic had gotten her from her momentary self-questioning and doubt. She took the moment to scoot closer to him, moving the sake bottle to her other side, and rested her head against his broad shoulder. Naruto felt his face heat at this, the woman having done things like this often in the past. You're a strong man, Naruto-kun, and I must admit I find myself jealous of the luck of the Godain Mizukage. As sensei, Naruto's blush deepened at her admission, watching as she poured them each another saucer all without moving from his side. Let a hurt woman have her musings, Naruto-kun, she smiled, seemingly to lean further into his natural warmth. The blonde sighed at that, not even able to fathom what exactly was happening at the moment, partly wondering if it was just the sake talking, or if Jiraiya's old wise tale of people speak their true heart when they were drunk had any weight to it. But there was no way this woman, his mother's best friend, his best friend's mother and his sensei, would have any feelings like that for him. It was beyond unfathomable to the blonde. He watched as she downed the sake a third time, following her example and doing the same with his. But,